Chapter 1339. My lord. Suki hesitated, wondering what else he could say. Speak the truth. Wang Chang's brow furrowed in rage. My lord, the situation truly is bad. Master Zhu's influence on us is far greater than we imagined. Many places are protesting and criticizing us. And there are also people deliberately adding fuel to the fire. The current situation is extremely bad. Su Shixian said, his voice extremely gloomy. Continue. Wang Chong gloomily said. Because of the imperial court's orders, he had been grounded in his residence for 2 months. He could only rely on Su Shixian and Su Qi for information. But Wang Chong had never imagined that they would dare to hide such an important matter from him. The sight of Wang Chong's rage caused everyone to fall silent. They had followed Wang Chong for so long, but they had never seen Wang Chong get angry at his subordinates. It was clear that this matter had truly enraged him. My lord, the booksellers in the capital have completely banned us. No one dares to lightly offend the Confucians. Although we've established a new bookstore and are printing our own books, not a single one of our books has been sold. Continue. Wang Chong continued, his face ashen. The voices in the capital are extremely unfavorable to my lord. In this period of time, at least 10 some groups of people have been marching near our residence, but we've noticed and dispersed them. I don't know if the city guards have been negligent or if they've made some sort of mistake, but these people have managed to break through to our residence and disturb my lord. Su Shixian hesitated for a moment, then stealthily glanced at Wang Chong and continued. In addition, we've just received news that the Uzan Empire and the Western Turkic Khaganate, in order to cooperate with the Confucian sect, have announced that they will reduce their armies by 50,000 and will further shrink their defensive lines to show their sincerity in coexisting with the Tang dynasty. This matter has already caused a ruckus in the capital, and the imperial court has even received a private letter from His Majesty Uzan and Dalen Trinling, stating that the Uzan Empire has no intention of making an enemy of the Tang dynasty, and that my lord is deliberately obstructing the two countries and plunging them into war. Su Shixian said. In addition, there's news that my lord is bent on starting a war and is currently colluding with the Bureau of Military Personnel to use the Arab incident to once more recruit soldiers. Moreover, they are preparing to fight against Uzan, the Eastern and Western Turks, Goguryeo, and Mengshi Zhao. Suki added. What? Hearing those words, Wang Chong widened his eyes in shock. During this period of time, he had been reflecting on his wrongdoings in seclusion and hadn't had any contact with Zhangqiu Jianxiong. Never in his wildest dreams did Wang Chong expect such a rumor to spread. Sir, you have already tried your best in this matter. We just want to. Enough. Before Su Shixian and the others could finish speaking, Wang Chong sternly interrupted them. Wang Chong's eyes were tightly shut as he stood there for a long time. In this short period of time, Wang Chong had never imagined that the situation in the capital would have worsened to this extent. Open the door. Wang Chong quickly opened his eyes and ordered. My lord, you can't. Everyone grew anxious at Wang Chong's words and wanted to stop him. They had stopped at least 10 some groups of people who had come to the residence to demonstrate, and they were all keenly aware of how intense the crowd was. Wang Chong could not go out at a time like this. Open the door. Wang Chong repeated. His expression was cold, and there was no room for negotiation. Outside the residence, the sounds of guards being pushed and shoved could be heard. These guards alone were not enough to stop the furious crowd. Moreover, Wang Chong wanted to see for himself just how bad the situation had gotten. He had already been avoiding for 10 some days, and he could not continue to avoid it. Bang! With a loud noise, the gate of the Wang clan's residence was completely opened from the inside out. Dressed in casual clothes, Wang Chong stepped over the threshold and walked out. Although he had heard the waves of noise from his study, only when he opened the gate and walked out did he realize what sort of state the Wang family residence was in. It was like he had gone from one world to another, as endless waves of noise came from all around him. Wang Chong looked around and saw that the crowd outside was so dense that he could not see the end of it. Down with the king of foreign lands! Oppose the war! Shouts rose and fell, resounding over the horizon. The people gathered outside the Wang family residence were men and women, young and old. All of them were shouting until their faces were red to the ears, and they seemed extremely agitated. At the gate, 20-some fully armored guards of the Wang family residence were doing their best to hold back the crowd. But in the face of these angry ordinary people who did not know martial arts, these guards did not dare to be rough. Even though each of them was powerful, they were all in a passive position. Stones rained down on these Wang clan guards from all directions, and there were also many protesters who surrounded them, kicking and beating them with all their might. These guards, despite their martial prowess, were beaten black and blue, and they could only use their hands to protect their vitals, neither saying a word nor retreating. "Stop!" Wang Chong finally couldn't help but call out. "It's the king of foreign lands." This furious roar finally roused the enraged crowd from their stupor, and countless gazes quickly focused on Wang Chong. In an instant, all the sounds disappeared. The area in front of Wang Chong's residence was completely silent, no one saying a word. "All of you withdraw," Wang Chong said to the Wang family residence guards who had taken the beating in his place. This incident had nothing to do with them, and these guards were only taking the beating in his place. If not for him, they would never have been surrounded and beaten. "But, my lord," the leading guard wanted to say something, but Wang Chong only waved his hand and interrupted him. "Go. Leave this place to me," Wang Chong sternly said. The Tinsum Wang family residence guards hesitated for a few moments before finally dragging their injured bodies over the threshold and vanishing from the Wang family residence. "King of foreign lands, you're finally willing to come out. You ambitious bastard, we trusted you so much in vain. You haven't shown yourself for so long. Is it because you have a guilty conscience? Everyone was wrong about you." Another furious voice came from the crowd, and two pairs of eyes hatefully stared at Wang Chong. If looks could kill, Wang Chong would have died countless times over. Wang Chong felt a stabbing pain in his heart as he stared at these hateful gazes. As a person who had lived two lives, Wang Chong had been constantly on the run to save the Central Plains, to save the Central Plains, to save these ordinary men, women, and children. He could care less about high positions and generous salaries, could care less about the imperial court stripping him of his authority, could care less about the rebuke and criticism of the entire Confucian school. But he could not care less about these ordinary men, women, and children. "Everyone, please listen to me." Wang Chong's voice was loud and resounded over the residence like a peal of thunder. Upon hearing Wang Chong speak, the crowd once more fell silent and turned to him. "King of foreign lands, you secretly colluded with the Bureau of Military Personnel to start a war with the other countries. Is that true or not? You privately gathered soldiers and defied imperial decree in order to start a war to satisfy your selfish desires. Is that true or not? What do you mean by might makes right? The other countries are already reducing their armies. Did you not see that? We trusted you in vain. But it turns out that you only wanted to satisfy your selfish desires and ask for rewards. King of foreign lands, what else do you have to say?" Many people in the crowd shouted sternly, "Everyone listen to me. I never discussed with the Bureau of Military Personnel about gathering soldiers or starting a war with the other countries. These are just rumors. It's true that I privately gathered soldiers and defied imperial decree to open the armory. But all of this was to protect Anxi, Qixi, Longxi, and the capital. The general is on the battlefield, and orders cannot be obeyed. The situation on the battlefield can change at any moment. If I waited for the imperial court to decide, it would take a very long time. Not only would the Anxi Protectorate army be buried on the other side, even Anxi, Qixi, and the Qixi Imperial Armory would fall into enemy hands. I only did what I had to do. Rather than let those armaments fall into enemy hands and be used by the Arabs, it was better to open the armory ahead of time and use it to defend the Central Plains." Wang Chong's eyes were red, his hair fiercely dancing in the wind. The matter of the Qixi armory was a military affair, and Wang Chong had never explained much to anyone. Not even Xue Qianjun and the others had explained the matter of Qixi. But this time, Wang Chong was explaining to these ordinary people who knew nothing about the art of war. Wang Chong swears to the heavens that everything I do, is without any selfish motives. If I break this oath, may the heavens punish me. Wang Chong sternly said as he gazed at the unfamiliar faces before him. The moment Wang Chong finished speaking, the dense crowd in front of the Wang family residence instantly fell silent. Wang Chong, you've always said that the other countries are hiding their ambitions. But Uzun first reduced its army by 150,000, and then the Western Turkic Khaganate reduced its army by 200,000, and then another by 50,000. How do you explain this? Now all of society is saying that you generals wrote, might makes right to beguile the hearts of the people, so that you can fight wars and gain merit. Isn't that right? A man in the crowd angrily bellowed, his face red and brimming with rage at being deceived. These words made Wang Chong feel like a sword had been stabbed in his heart. His months of painstaking effort had been exchanged for these words. In the end, the hearts of the people had once more been deceived. As he gazed at the earnest faces of the people of the Tang dynasty, Wang Chong felt like his heart was being stabbed. Chapter 1340. At every autumn harvest, the Uzun, the Eastern and Western Turks, and the surrounding countries will invade the Central Plains, never once stopping. The Uzun army is only a delaying tactic. Once the time is ripe, they will rise again and wreak havoc on the Central Plains. Everyone, don't be so gullible. Wang Chong sternly said. Buzz! Everyone fell so quiet at Wang Chong's words that one could hear a pin drop. There was no other sound but the rushing of air. You murderous demon king! Everyone, don't listen to him. Wang Chong, you were made king of foreign lands, and you've already killed 1 million people. Isn't that enough? Do you want to make the Central Plains a land of corpses and rivers of blood, turning it into a land of azuras? You generals are truly unscrupulous, resorting to every conceivable means. And to think that I trusted you so much, treating your might makes right like a supreme treasure, reading it over and over again, even going so far as to fall out with the master. It turns out that everything was just your selfishness playing tricks on you. You privately raised troops and disobeyed the sovereign's decree, plotting rebellion. I truly trusted you wrongly. Wang Chong, you ambitious man. A few moments later, the crowd exploded with a tsunami of voices, countless attacks and curses directed at Wang Chong. Their faces were seething with rage, none of them listening to Wang Chong's words. As he listened to those curses, Wang Chong felt his heart clench and convulse. Now that he had returned from the western regions, Wang Chong's blood had calmed down. But upon hearing the barrage of curses and attacks, Wang Chong felt his blood churning once more. Everyone, listen to me. Wang Chong still wanted to say something, but the furious crowd couldn't hear his voice at all. Bang! A stone came out of nowhere and smashed into Wang Chong's forehead, but Wang Chong stood there motionlessly. My lord. Seeing this, Feng Sanyuan, Su Shixian and Su Qi paled. They hastily rushed forward to protect Wang Chong. Sir, let's go. Now is not the time to argue. Their misunderstanding of my lord is too deep. One day, they will understand. Everyone said anxiously. Bam, bam, bam. Seeing that the crowd had come out to protect them, in an instant, countless stones swarmed over, and the surrounding protesters attacked even more fiercely. Stop. I have something to ask you. At this moment, an old voice suddenly came from the crowd. In the next moment, the crowd parted like a wave. Right at the front of the crowd, an old man who looked at least 80 years old, wearing coarse linen clothes and holding a walking stick, slowly walked up from the back with his back bowed. The old man stared at Wang Chong with anger hidden between his brows. Upon seeing the old man, the crowd instantly quietened down. Countless gazes turned to the gray-haired old man, and Wang Chong standing in front of the gate. Some of the figures retreated one after another, to give the two of them enough space. 70 was a rare occurrence, but 80 was a very old age. In the Tang dynasty, those who could live past 80 were people of virtue and prestige, respected by all. Even the most stubborn and unruly person would not dare to attack an 80-year-old old man in front of so many people. Wang Chong, you come from a clan of ministers and generals, a prince of the Tang dynasty. This old man is just an old man from the countryside. I cannot compare to you. If you have the ability, Then beat this old man to death." The old man leaned on his walking stick and sneered at Wang Chong. These words were so sudden that even Wang Chong was left dumbfounded. This old man is 83 years old this year. Unlike others, this old man is from Jinshu, not from the capital. It's often said that a man strives for a breath of pride, and a Buddha for a stick of incense. But this old man is different. This old man has lived for more than 80 years, and I've never gotten angry at anyone. Whenever I encounter a problem, this old man advises himself to endure and yield. But this time, this old man traveled a great distance to the capital just to see you. Do you know why? The old man's face was ashen as he thrust his walking stick at Wang Chong said, "Elder, stop. What are you doing?" Su Shixian, Su Kai, and the others were both shocked and infuriated, but none of them dared to step forward. Let alone step forward, they didn't even dare to touch the old man. 80-year-old elders were the most respected people in the world. Anyone who dared to touch them would immediately be condemned by the masses, and there would be no place in the empire for them. For fear of harming the innocent, none of them dared to touch the old man. They could only step forward and use their bodies to protect Wang Chong from the old man's beating. "Su Shixian, Suki, get out of the way." At this moment, a voice came from behind him. Wang Chong stared in a daze at the gray-haired old man, who clearly knew no martial arts. He had imagined all sorts of situations, imagined all sorts of opponents, but he had never imagined that he would be facing an ordinary and angry elder of the Great Tang, and that this was the group of people he had done everything in his power to protect. At this moment, Wang Chong felt like his blood was in chaos, but there seemed to be something stuck there that he couldn't vent. Have him come. No matter what happened, Wang Chong didn't care. Only Wang Chong wanted to hear what this old man had to say, to know what he was thinking, and why he was so angry at him. Su Shixian and Su Qi went stiff at Wang Chong's words. Although they were unwilling, they didn't dare to disobey Wang Chong's orders. Their faces alternated between green and white as they retreated to the side. Brat, this old man has lived for many years and has seen many things. In this day and age, as long as you live long enough, you can see all sorts of strange and wondrous things. But this is the first time this old man has seen someone like you. This old man is different from others. The people here today either want to beat you because you're weak, or because you want to rebel. But this old man is not one of them. The old man sneered. As he spoke, he took out a book from his bosom and threw it in front of Wang Chong. Su Shixian and the others paled at the words on the book's cover, and Wang Chong paled like he had been struck by lightning. There were only a few words written on the cover. Wang Chong's might makes right. In a flash, Wang Chong seemed to understand something, but he said nothing, only stared at the elder with a pale face. Might makes right. This old man has lived for many years, but he has never seen someone so grandiose as to print such words on a book cover and proclaim them to the world. Didn't you say in your book that tigers eat wolves, wolves eat dogs, and dogs eat rabbits? Didn't you preach something about the strong eating the weak and the survival of the fittest? Do you know what the Central Plains would become if this doctrine of yours were to be spread throughout the world? Come, come, come. This old man knows that you come from a clan of ministers and generals, that your martial arts are very high and formidable. So come and beat this old man to death. This old man has lived for several decades and doesn't have much ability. Since you think you're right, that you think might makes right, then come and beat this old man to death. As the elder spoke, he stomped his cane, waved his sleeve, and took a step toward Wang Chong, his emotions surging. Wang Chong wouldn't dare. Wang Chong grimaced, and almost subconsciously retreated. But then, a heavy slap struck Wang Chong's face. Let alone Su Shixian and the others. Even the crowd surrounding the Wang clan residence was dumbfounded. No one had expected the old man to give Wang Chong a vicious slap in front of everyone. My lord, the crowd was stunned, only now coming to their senses, and standing between Wang Chong and the old man. All of you brats, get out of my way! The old man's gaze had been locked onto Wang Chong this entire time. When he saw Su Shixian and the others standing in his way, he began to beat them in the face, cursing as he did so. Foul brat, this old man is beating you today. You are so young and arrogant, lacking any true ability, Yet you dare to write books like Master Zhu and spread them throughout the world. If your crooked doctrines were allowed to be spread throughout the world, wouldn't this magnificent China become a land of beasts? You don't cultivate etiquette. You don't speak of benevolence. Your fist is the truth. You don't have affection. You don't get close to your parents. Is this what Wang Gengji and your mother taught you? If your father won't teach you a lesson, this old man will teach you a lesson in their place. I'll beat you to death, foul brat. As the old man cursed, he raised his cane, circled around Su Shixian and Su Kui, and continued to beat Wang Chong. His face was ashen. Although he didn't have much strength, each blow was filled with all his strength, as if he was teaching a heinous criminal a lesson. Buzz! Wang Chong's eyes were wide open in a daze as he stared at the enraged old man. His ears were ringing and his body was unsteady, as if someone was clutching his heart. In that instant, he seemed to have been possessed. Wang Chong could sense that this old man had no one supporting him. Every word he spoke came from the bottom of his heart, his true thoughts. Wang Chong's mind was blank, and he could hear nothing. He could only see the old man's mouth open and close, his entire body seeming to lose its soul. Su Shixian, take His Highness inside. We can't stay here any longer. I'll stop that old man. As he watched the crowd grow more and more excited, Su Qi turned to Su Shixian, growing more and more anxious. Everyone look. The Demon King of Slaughter's subordinates are about to kill someone. The crowd began to shout when they saw Su Qi, and the others step forward. The originally quiet crowd seemed to have been stimulated, and became excited once again. All of them rushed forward excitedly. Beat them to death. So what if it's the king of foreign lands? Do they really dare to kill someone? Chapter 1341. Gallop. At this moment, the sound of galloping hooves could be heard in the distance. In the distance, one could see large banners fluttering in the air, and beneath these banners were countless soldiers of the city guard. The laws of the imperial court forbid gathering here. The city guard is here. Everyone disperse. A thunderous voice echoed through the air. Someone pass on my order. If anyone else dares to gather here in 15 minutes and disturb the order of the capital, they are to be captured and handed over to the capital governor to be dealt with. Boom! The banners of the city guard and that voice caused the surroundings to fall silent for a few moments, and then everyone began to scatter. The city guard was the force that governed the capital and had the right to maintain order in the capital. The crowd was quickly dispersed by the soldiers of the city guard. Chonger, I'm late. Warhorse hooves clattered against the ground. A city guard division officer quickly charged over, stopping in front of the Wang family manor's gates, dismounting. The general took off his helmet, revealing an uneasy and concerned face. It was none other than Wang Chong's uncle Li Lin. Li Lin had an apologetic look on his face as he looked at Wang Chong. There was an accident. Someone from the imperial court specifically transferred away the soldiers of the city guard. I also received an order at the last minute and went back to report. I didn't think that this would happen so soon after I left. Li Lin was in charge of the soldiers of the city guard stationed at the gate of the Wang family residence, and there had never been an accident. For so many people to appear at once, it was clear that someone was trying to guide them from behind the scenes. But Li Lin was in no mood to investigate this. He was more worried about Wang Chong's current condition. His face was pale, and he seemed to be in a daze. There was something very wrong with him. Hurry and help him in. With no time to think, Li Lin led Su Kui, Su Shixian, Xue Qianjun, and Zhang Ke over the threshold and into the Wang family residence with Wang Chong. Bang! Not long after crossing the threshold, a figure suddenly dropped to the ground like a wooden pillar. My lord! Chonger! Seeing this scene, everyone turned pale with fright. On the ground, Wang Chong's face was pale. His teeth were clenched, and his fists were clenched. He lay motionless on the ground. He had already stopped breathing. Quick! Call the doctor! Li Lin roared, his face full of fear. He picked up Wang Chong from the ground and quickly rushed into the room. Ha ha ha. Wang Chong, how does it feel to be the enemy of the world? A burst of laughter rang out in the darkness. On a majestic mountain peak, surrounded by countless corpses and tens of thousands of streams of blood, A bolt of lightning pierced through the sky. In the lightning, Wang Chong clearly saw a slightly fat figure holding a dark red spear, wearing a black and red battle armor, standing on the mountain peak, and baring his teeth at him. You want to save the world and be a hero? Would the world be willing to let you save them? Even if you go all out, won't the 9 continents still fall into my hands? Wang Chong, you lost. And Yao Yuishan's sinister laughter resounded through the world. Wang Chong's blood surged to his head, and his eyes went red. Without the slightest hesitation, he clenched his fists and charged at that plump figure on the mountain. I still haven't lost. And Yao Yuishan, hand over your life. But before Wang Chong could charge over rumble, the sky darkened, and that majestic mountain and the sea of corpses and blood around it vanished, leaving behind only darkness and nothingness. Kaio. All of a sudden, a series of battle cries shook the heavens and the earth. The clip-clop of the horses' hooves was as loud as thunder. The sound was almost undetectable at first, but in a few short moments, the earth quaked and the sky shook. Countless warriors clad in golden armor roared and howled as they raised their sabers and swords, tens of thousands of them brushing past Wang Chong and charging forward. Follow my lord for eternity. For the Tang dynasty. Kaio. The sounds of fighting thundered like thunder, causing one's blood to boil. Countless soldiers covered the mountains and plains. In a daze, Wang Chong had returned to the time when he was leading an army through the 9 provinces against the otherworldly invaders. Kaio. Wang Chong felt his blood boil. Clang. He unsheathed his sword. But before Wang Chong could step forward, a blood-stained hand reached out of the ground and grabbed Wang Chong's right foot. My lord, no one understands us. Everyone has given up. Is there really any meaning in our persistence? Wang Chong lowered his head and realized that the ground was covered in corpses, all of them soldiers who had fought with him. Beneath his feet was a general who had followed him to battle. He was covered in blood, and his armor was in tatters. He was looking up at him, his face pale and his tired eyes filled with deep despair. My lord, is there any meaning in our persistence? No one understands us. No one understands us. In that instant, countless voices echoed in all directions. Wang Chong looked at the despairing faces at his feet, stunned and motionless. In that instant the world spun. Wang Chong stood there in a daze, his body drenched in cold sweat. Are you the source of chaos in the world? A voice rang in his ears, and then it became thousands of voices. Rumble. All of a sudden, the ground collapsed and endless waves surged. In that instant, Wang Chong felt as if he had become a piece of wood, falling into the boundless sea. The seawater pressed against him from all directions. It was cold, heavy, and suffocating. In the darkness, a wave suddenly came, followed by a second, a third. Heavy waves rose and fell, throwing Wang Chong into the depths of the sea again and again. Darkness, coldness, despair. All kinds of feelings came one after another. In that instant, Wang Chong felt an unprecedented loneliness. Doctor, what's wrong with our my lord? In the darkness, Wang Chong could faintly hear a worried voice, and then he heard another sigh. Haa. His Highness's internal fire is burning, and his mind is stifled and depressed. And if I'm not wrong, His Highness has experienced similar situations before. His blood energy is in disorder. Not good. Boom. In the blink of an eye, there was another boom, and everything before him vanished. The scene before Wang Chong's eyes was constantly changing. One moment, he was surrounded by an overwhelming fire. The next moment, he was surrounded by an incomparably cruel ice. Wang Chong's mind was immersed in this boundless fire and water, constantly sinking. King Qi, the king of Song, the first prince, the fifth prince, Li Junxian, countless figures appeared before his eyes. Finally, Wang Chong fell unconscious. At this moment, the Wang family residence was shrouded in a gloomy atmosphere. In Wang Chong's room, the king of Song, Zhangqiu Jinxiong, Wang Chong's big uncle Wang Zhen, Elder Yi, Elder Zhao, and the others were all present. Next to the bed, Wang Chong's mother was silently wiping away her tears. Around the room, the maids silently wept as they gazed at the motionless figure of Wang Chong on the bed. Seeing this scene, everyone's hearts were filled with sorrow. They had all hurried over upon receiving the news. And when they saw Wang Chong on the bed with his teeth tightly clenched, they all felt ashamed. The Tang dynasty was everyone's Tang dynasty, not Wang Chong's alone. But on this matter, Wang Chong was unquestionably alone. He had strived and struggled, trying time and time again to reverse this inevitable defeat and change the hearts of the people of the world. And on this matter, he was a lonely fighter. Whether it was the king of Song, Zhangqiu Jinqiong, or anyone else, none of them had been able to provide him with much help. In this matter, each of them had an unshakable responsibility. This child has been unconscious for several days. It seems that this matter has dealt a very heavy blow to him. This can't continue. We should do something. We can't place everything on this child's shoulders. Don't forget he's only 18. But there's nothing we can do right now. Master Zhu is the leader of all Confucians and wields the greatest authority in the world. Even Emperor Xian treats him with great respect, and the majority of the people now support the Confucians. The mood was gloomy, and everyone stared at each other, unable to speak. In the current situation, it was difficult to turn back from the accumulated bad habits. Even if they did their best, they would not be able to change the hearts of the people of Xian. But what worried them the most was still Wang Chong's condition. Everyone looked at the young face on the bed, and there was a thick cloud of worry between their brows. Doctor, it's already been 3 days. Is there really no way to cure Chonger's injuries? Wang Chong's big uncle Wang Zhen suddenly asked as he looked at the imperial physician, who was tidying up his medicine chest. There's nothing that can be done. I don't know what technique His Highness cultivates, but there are at least several dozen kinds of energy in his body. Coupled with the depression in his heart, he fell into a coma. If His Highness wants to recover, he can only rely on himself. The imperial physician the king of Song had invited from the palace shook his head and sighed. Hearing this, the room fell silent, and the atmosphere suddenly became much heavier. Tap! At this moment, a white figure in the corner suddenly moved. Under everyone's gazes, Su Yiqin, tears still in her eyes, slowly walked to Wang Chong's bed. Lady Su. Upon seeing Su Yiqin, everyone's eyes were filled with sorrow. The relationship between Su Yiqin and Wang Chong was no longer a secret. Everyone knew that this young lady of the Su clan had developed feelings for Wang Chong. In this period of time, they had only come once, but Su Yiqin had come 3 times a day. Lady Su, you must take care of your body. If Chonger saw you like this, he would be very worried. By the side, Wang Chong's big uncle Wang Zhen consoled her. Ever since Wang Chong fell into a coma, this child had clearly become much thinner, and his entire body seemed to be lacking in energy. But at this moment, Su Yiqin seemed to hear nothing. Her face was pale, and tears were streaming down her cheeks. This was already the 2nd time she had seen Wang Chong fall into a coma. For the sake of the Tang dynasty, Wang Chong had used all his strength. He was like a lonely warrior, constantly roaring at the heavens and fighting. At times, he made others think that he was a fool, but this was precisely what attracted her to him. Wang Chong. Su Yiqin suddenly bent down and lightly kissed Wang Chong's forehead. I believe that you won't lose. No matter what, you must never admit defeat. Seeing the unconscious Wang Chong, Su Yiqin revealed a forlorn smile. Buzz! Under everyone's gazes, Wang Chong's chaotic breathing seemed to hear Su Yiqin's words, and his breathing suddenly steadied. Everyone was dumbfounded by this sight. Chapter 1342. At this moment, Wang Chong could see and hear nothing in the depths of his mind, only endless ice and fire, and a dark and icy ocean. You won't lose. No matter what, never admit defeat. As Wang Chong was sinking into the ice and fire, a gentle voice resounded in his mind again and again. It was like he had discovered land in the middle of a dark ocean, and Wang Chong's mind suddenly calmed down. Qichin. Wang Chong spat out these 2 words, and then he knew nothing else. After what seemed like only one battle, but also like countless eons, Wang Chong finally awoke from the darkness with a light cough. Chong, you're finally awake. As Wang Chong slowly opened his eyes, Wang Chong's mother hugged Wang Chong, tears finally streaming down her face. Mother! Big uncle! As Wang Chong looked at the 2 familiar voices, A surge of warmth flowed through his heart. Chong'er, you're finally awake. Wang Chong's big uncle Wang Zhen also spoke. He walked to the bed and helped Wang Chong up, his eyes brimming with concern. Wang Chong sat up and scanned the room. He saw several familiar figures. Su Shixian, Su Qi, Zhang Ke, and the others were all in the room. They were all looking at Wang Chong with joy, concern, and even more unease and guilt. "My lord, you're finally awake." Wang Chong's complexion was still very poor, and his body seemed rather weak, but he had finally awoken from his coma. This was undoubtedly the best news they had heard in a while, and everyone rejoiced. "You've all come." Wang Chong nodded at the crowd. "Your Highness, my apologies." When they saw how weak Wang Chong looked, they felt guilty. "If it weren't for us, this wouldn't have happened." "Heh, what does it have to do with you? It's just me from the beginning." Wang Chong shook his head, but his expression was unexpectedly calm. But when they saw Wang Chong's calm expression, whether it was Wang Chong's mother, big uncle Wang Zhen, Su Qi, Su Shixian, Shui Qianjun, or the others, they only grew more and more worried. Wang Chong's performance was too calm. This was not what everyone had imagined him to be. However, Wang Chong did not give them a chance to ask. "Mother, during the time I was unconscious, did anyone come by?" "The King of Song, Lord Zhangqiu, Elder Yi, and Elder Zhao are all here," Wang Chong's mother said, a faint smile on her lips. Wang Chong was taken aback, but he quickly regained his composure. He looked at his mother and smiled. "Mother, I know what you're worried about. Relax, I'm fine." Boom. As they were speaking, another wave of raucous voices came from outside the Wang family residence. Everyone in the room tensed at these voices, but Wang Chong only blinked, his expression unchanged. "Cough cough, Chong'er. You've only just woken up and your body is still very weak. You should rest for now. Sister-in-law, let's go out and let Chong'er have some time to calm down." Wang Zhen lightly coughed as he spoke to Wang Chong's mother. As he spoke, he shot a meaningful glance at Su Kai and Su Shixian. Wang Chong had been in a coma and had been depressed. If Wang Chong were to hear the protests of the crowd outside, who knew what would happen? "Your Highness, then we'll take our leave." Su Shixian, Su Kai, and the others were alarmed and uneasy as they hurried out. Wang Chong only gave a slight nod, saying nothing. In the blink of an eye, the people in the room had all left. Very quickly, in just a moment, the bustling voices outside quickly quieted down. In the room, Wang Chong sat in a daze on his bed. After some time, Wang Chong moved to the edge of the bed and finally stood up. Outside the window, dark clouds had gathered and the sky was dark. Wang Chong stared at the sky in a daze, not moving for a long time. But not even Wang Chong noticed that in the distance, a pair of eyes was peering through the window of the Wang family residence, silently watching him from the roof of a roof. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, that voice shrank down from the roof and vanished in a few blinks. After passing through many streets and winding back and forth, until he confirmed that he was not being followed, the black-clothed figure arrived in front of a magnificent and luxurious estate. With a flash, he leapt over the wall and entered through an unremarkable back door. Walking along a dark passageway, he entered the main hall. It was completely dark, and there was already a figure standing sideways, waiting silently. The hall was so dark that it was impossible to make out the figure's appearance, but one could faintly make out his clothes. This figure was dressed in casual clothes and wore a hood. Just by standing there, he exuded the aura of boundless authority. It was clear that he possessed an extraordinary status. "My lord, I just investigated. That boy from the Wang clan finally woke up a moment ago." The black-clothed figure kneeled on the ground and respectfully reported. "Buzz." The black-clothed figure's voice had barely faded when the atmosphere in the hall suddenly changed, becoming tense and brimming with danger. "That boy still hasn't died?" In the darkness, the figure with the hood narrowed his eyes, his voice suffused with thick, killing intent. "But I noticed that although he has woken up, he seems to be recovering from a serious illness, and his complexion isn't very good. In addition, we tested the imperial physician who treated him, and that physician said that the stellar energy in his body is in chaos, and that there are more than 100 different kinds of stellar energy, which could explode at any moment." The kneeling black-clothed man said. Oh. Hearing the black-clothed man's words, the man's expression changed slightly. He seemed to feel much better. More than 100 kinds. Good. Help me inform those people that it's time for them to move. The man's voice was as cold as ice, and his aura was as sharp as a sword. Boy, you truly have a tough life. At such a young age, you've already become the king of foreign lands, and thrown the entire world into chaos. Even Master Zhu has been forced out by you. Given enough time, you'll be doomed. Since you don't know what's good for you, I can only send you on your way. The voice was so sinister that even the kneeling black-clothed man couldn't help but shiver. However, it only took a moment for the figure with the condor's head to disappear from the hall. The black-robed man also disappeared without a trace. The gate of the Wang clan was tightly shut. Ever since Wang Chong had been stripped of his position and denounced by Master Zhu, all the civil and military officials of the imperial court had taken a detour, staying far away from the Wang clan. Outside the Wang clan residence, crowds of people were marching. Even though Su Shixian and the others had tried to use the city guard to prevent Wang Chong from knowing, they were still unable to completely stop them. Within the residence, Wang Chong seemed to have forgotten everything, living a peaceful life. The matters of the imperial court, the border, and the Confucian sect had all been put aside by him. In the residence, Wang Chong ate, drank tea, and slept in an extremely regular manner. He even talked and laughed with his servants. Everything seemed normal. Moreover, Wang Chong never discussed any matters related to the imperial court. But when everyone saw this, they only grew more and more worried. Doctor, just how is my son? In another room of the Wang clan residence, Wang Chong's mother, big uncle, Su Shixian Suki, and the others were all present, a hint of worry in their eyes. His Highness looked normal, and his pulse seemed to be stable, but if this matter was not resolved, he would never be able to recover. Given the state of stellar energy in His Highness's body, he will probably be in even more danger. The gray-bearded imperial physician sighed. Experts were as common as clouds in the imperial palace, and imperial physicians not only had to treat ordinary palace maids, concubines and imperial concubines, but also princes, guardians, imperial guards, and imperial princes of the Tang dynasty. In terms of understanding of the martial path, these imperial physicians had extraordinary attainments. Everyone in the room deeply furrowed their brows at the imperial physician's words, a deep worry on their faces. The conflict between militarists and Confucians had far-reaching implications, and none of them had a good solution. For a moment, everyone fell silent. While everyone in the room was filled with worry, in the distant study, Wang Chong was dressed in casual clothes, a belt casually tied on the back of his head, giving him a casual and natural appearance. A piece of rice paper was spread out in front of him, and Wang Chong was holding a brush, casually writing on the paper. His expression was calm and at ease, seemingly unaffected by the outside world. Like spring, calm and tranquil, the sky above and below, a vast expanse of jade, seagulls soar, golden scales swim. This was a Wing Chun poem, and Wang Chong had forgotten where he had seen it from. All he knew was that he would write whatever came to mind. Perhaps it was because he had experienced so many things, but Wang Chong's heart had slowly settled. His writing was no longer as clumsy and childish as when he had first consort Taizhen's incident. Instead, it had an air of weathered hardships, grand, steady, and dignified. Each stroke was as sharp as an axe. While imprisoned in the estate, Wang Chong used this kind of calligraphy every day to pass the time and ease his mind. On the shore, Ting Lan Yu Qing Qing, but when the long smoke cleared the sky, the bright moon stretched 1,000 miles. The floating light leaped over gold, the quiet shadow sank into jade. As Wang Chong continued writing, he seemed to be completely immersed in his calligraphy. Worry about advancing, worry about retreating. But when should I be happy? As the saying goes, worry about the worries of the world first, and rejoice in the joys of the world later. Chapter 1343. Blood splattered onto the paper. Drop by drop, blood splattered onto the paper. When Wang Chong lowered his head to take a look, he realized that because he had used too much force, the brush had stabbed into his palm, causing blood to gush out. However, Wang Chong didn't feel the slightest pain, as if the brush had stabbed into someone else's palm instead of his. Blood dripped onto the paper. Looking at the words, first worry about the world, then delight in the world, Wang Chong felt a stabbing pain in his heart. It wasn't from his palm, but from his heart. Wang Chong had always thought that he had forgotten about it, that he had learned to be indifferent to it. However, when he saw the 2 lines of words and felt the throbbing pain in his heart, Wang Chong realized that the pain hadn't disappeared. Instead, it had been hidden even deeper. Slowly retracting his palm, he wiped away the bloodstains, applied medicine, and bandaged his wound. Then he switched to another brush and continued writing. It was as if nothing had happened at all. Days passed, and in the blink of an eye, there was only half a month left until Wang Chong's imprisonment. Wang Chong's second brother, Wang Bei, and little sister, Wang Xiaoyao, had also returned from the borders. This made the Wang clan more or less joyous, and the gloomy clouds that had shrouded the residence also disappeared. Come, let's eat. Night fell, and lanterns were hung high in the Wang clan's residence. The atmosphere was joyous, and everyone was gathered together. In the main hall, there was a long dining table, and it was covered with all kinds of delicacies. Under the bright red lanterns, everyone's faces were full of smiles. Only when the Wang clan ate was they at their most joyous, a time when they completely forgot about everything else. Come, let's get started. Wang Chong's mother sat at the head of the table, a smile on her face. Further down, on the left was Wang Chong, on the right was his second brother, Wang Bei, and at the end of the table was Wang Chong's little sister, Wang Xiaoyao. The others sat in order. I want to eat this. And this. And this. Wang Xiaoyao sat at the very bottom, the 2 specially made long chopsticks in her hands extended, and kept moving on the table. He put all the most delicious dishes into his bowl. The dishes in her bowl were piled higher than the rice, and her mouth was stuffed to the brim. All right, I won't forget about you. Madame Wang did not know whether to laugh or cry. The crowd burst into laughter. Compared to the others, Wang Chong's little sister, Wang Xiaoyao, always lived the most relaxed, the happiest, and the most carefree. She didn't have so many worries, and was the easiest to satisfy. Ever since she was young, her hobby had never changed. That was eating. Seeing that everyone was putting food into her bowl, Wang Xiaoyao opened her stomach and ate with big mouthfuls. Even his little head was blocked by the bowl, so he couldn't see clearly. With Wang Xiaoyao around, dinner would never be boring. Everyone sat together in a circle enjoying themselves. Aya, what's going on? Why isn't my favorite drumstick salted? Suddenly, Wang Xiaoyao picked up a drumstick and pouted. She frowned and looked very unhappy. Little sister, don't be mischievous. There's salt. A voice came from Wang Chong, who was sitting at the head of the table, looking at his little sister and chuckling. As he spoke, he picked up a chicken bone and put it into the bowl used to collect the leftovers. His little sister's mischievous personality hadn't changed at all. He had already eaten one, and didn't think there was anything wrong with it. Moreover, the chefs of the residence were all renowned chefs of the capital, so there was no way they wouldn't add salt. His little sister was just messing around. No salt, there's no salt. Wang Xiaoyao shouted angrily. As she spoke, she angrily threw the chopsticks in her hand onto the table. Xiaoyao, don't mess around. At the table, Wang Chong's mother immediately hardened her face at this sight. On the side, Wang Chong's second brother, Wang Bei, also unhappily frowned. Unlike Wang Chong and his mother, Wang Bei's cold eyes were far more lethal. If you're not going to eat, then leave. You don't believe me. I'm not messing around. There's just no salt. If you don't believe me, you can try it for yourselves. Wang Xiaoyao furrowed her brow and angrily glared at the crowd, showing no intention of backing down. Is that so? Young miss, let me try. Seeing that their young miss was angry, Su Shixian, Su Kai, and the others also took out their chopsticks and picked up a piece of chicken leg in order to alleviate the tension. This chicken leg had always been Wang Xiaoyao's favorite, and everyone had always let her have it, not touching it at all. At a time like this, she naturally had to try it. But this one bite caused Su Shixian, Su Kai, and the others to frown. What's wrong? Can none of you taste the salt? Wang Chong shook his head and chuckled. When his little sister was messing around, Su Shixian and Su Qi would sometimes accompany her to do so in order to curry favor with the little prince, who told her to be the youngest. It seems like there's no salt. Su Shixian and Su Qi looked hesitantly at Wang Chong. Nonsense. Wang Chong shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. 1, 2, 3. Seeing that the situation wasn't right, more and more people reached out their chopsticks to pick up the chicken leg. At this moment, footsteps came from outside. Under the astonished gazes of the crowd, the chef in charge of the Wang clan's food and drink hurriedly walked in with a spatula in hand. Madam, second young master, third young master, I truly apologize. Just now when I was copying the dishes, something went wrong. That bowl of young Mrs. favorite dongting chicken leg was brought out by the servants without any salt added. I'll go back to the pot. Madam, I truly apologize. As the old chef spoke, he took the bowl of chicken leg from the table and hurriedly left. Buzz. For a moment, the entire hall was deathly still, everyone staring at Wang Chong, the mood frozen. All of them had tasted that bowl of chicken leg. It truly was tasteless, and because it hadn't been in the pot long enough, it still tasted a bit raw. However, Wang Chong didn't seem to be able to taste it at all. At that moment, everyone's expressions were complicated, and their eyes were filled with deep worry. It had been some time since the incident. Everyone thought that Wang Chong had recovered and had forgotten about what had happened in court. Usually, he and Xiao Yao seemed to be chatting and laughing, as if he was fine. But at this moment, everyone suddenly realized that everything was different from what they had imagined. Wang Chong had never forgotten about it. The air was deathly silent. Looking at everyone's worried gazes, Wang Chong suddenly understood something, and the smile on his face slowly faded. He had been trying his best to hide it, but he hadn't expected to be exposed in this manner. Mother, I'm going out for a walk. Wang Chong stood up, put down his chopsticks, and didn't explain anything. Then, he avoided everyone's gazes and calmly walked out. Behind him, Wang Xiaoyao shouted, I said there was no salt, but you didn't believe me. And none of you believed me. As he walked out of the room, a gust of wind blew in his face, and Wang Chong suddenly felt cold. There were some things that he thought he had forgotten. He could deceive others, but he couldn't deceive himself. The mask he wore on his face would one day be inadvertently removed, and then the weakest corner would be revealed. Wang Chong didn't want everyone to worry, and he didn't want them to worry about him. It was just that there were some things that he couldn't let go of. He couldn't understand, and he was lost. In the darkness of the night, he didn't know where he should go. Madam, we found this in young master's room. Not long after Wang Chong left, a servant girl suddenly came forward and opened her palm. In her palm, apart from a bloodstained bandage, there was also a vermilion brush that had been broken in two. Seeing the bandage and brush, Wang Chong's mother's face suddenly paled. Mother, I'll go find him. Wang Chong's second brother, Wang Bei, suddenly stood up and said, There's no need. Let him be alone for a while. Wang Chong's mother shook her head, her eyes dim. Wang Chong had already fainted twice, and no one could resolve the knot in his heart. In this period of time, they could only try their best not to provoke him. In the residence, they wouldn't talk about anything related to the court. Just like the imperial physician had said, this child's heart could only be resolved by himself. In the quiet night, Wang Chong walked alone in the residence. He intentionally circled around the place where his mother and the others were, and walked through the most remote plum blossom forest, the long corridors and the fake mountains. He circled around again and again, but the pain in his heart didn't ease in the slightest. Instead, it became more and more stifling. Clang! Suddenly, the sound of the night watchman came from outside the walls. Wang Chong stopped, and he could faintly hear footsteps coming toward the Wang family residence. In the capital, there would be people announcing the time in every place late at night. Every time there was a night watch, there would usually be two people walking together. The Wang family residence is up ahead. The voices of two night watchmen attracted Wang Chong's attention. Isn't that the king of foreign lands? You're new here, so don't say too much. One of the night watchmen had barely said 2 words when he was interrupted by the other. The two of them continued to make the night watchman, gradually vanishing into the darkness. Wang Chong stood there in a daze. When he came back to his senses, he realized that he was standing in front of a tall courtyard wall. This wall was like a mountain, standing in front of him and pressing down on his heart. At that moment, Wang Chong suddenly felt an intense urge to go out and take a walk. Whoosh! With a light push, Wang Chong floated down to the wall like a leaf. Standing on the high wall, he could see the endless darkness, only the flickering of countless lanterns. At that moment, that familiar feeling once more surged into his heart. He was like a lone boat drifting in the boundless ocean, lost in the dark night, and had absolutely no idea where he should go. Wang Chong turned his head and saw that the 2 night watchmen were already getting farther and farther away. With a long sigh, Wang Chong jumped off the wall and headed in the opposite direction of the other 2. On the border of the Biting Protectorate, the imperial court and the Western Turks have agreed to pull back their defense lines another 100 li. That the entire wall was covered with these Confucian announcements. And right next to these announcements, Wang Chong saw something else. These announcements were different from the Confucian announcements, and the content of these announcements was much simpler. Defeat the king of foreign lands. The king of foreign lands is a demon king of slaughter. Might makes right. What a crooked theory. That the corners of these announcements were still wet. It was clear that they had been pasted on while those people were speaking. Wang Chong's face was pale as he stared at the words on the wall, his fingernails digging so deeply into his flesh that he didn't even realize it. Each of the words on the wall was like an iron chisel stabbing deep into Wang Chong's body. No one could see him in the middle of the night, but it was precisely for this reason that each word came from the bottom of his heart. At this moment, Wang Chong felt an excruciating pain in his heart. Wang Chong once more felt like he had been plunged into a dark and icy sea. No matter how he struggled, he could not escape, only sinking deeper and deeper. Tap tap. Wang Chong's footsteps grew faster and faster as he madly sprinted alone. Everything around him flowed in reverse like flowing water. In this period of time, he had done his best not to mention or think about the matters of the imperial court. Wang Chong believed that he could forget, that he could let go. But only now did Wang Chong realize that these wounds were far more painful than he had imagined. After running for a very long time, when he felt rather exhausted, Wang Chong finally stopped. An unfamiliar forest stood before him, and a faint light peeked out from the sky. Only now did Wang Chong realize that he had gone from the western part of the city to the southern part. Who is it? Wang Chong suddenly turned his head, his eyes as sharp as swords as he looked into the forest behind him. The surroundings were quiet, and there was no sound at all. You've been following me for so long. Do you want to force me to invite you out? Wang Chong's eyes were sharp, and he opened his palm. Energy immediately gathered in his palm, transforming into a faint glow that was as sharp as a sword. Wait! Just when Wang Chong was about to strike, a voice came from the forest 20 paces behind him. Whoosh! In a flash of light, a figure jumped down from the lush treetops and landed on the ground. Unlike what he had imagined, this person was not masked and dressed in black. Instead, he was wearing a green embroidered robe with the character Ultimate embroidered on his chest. You're from the Duke of E residence? Wang Chong was stunned. He had never imagined that the person who had been following him for most of the night would be someone from the Duke of E residence. Although this person had not stated his identity, his robe was very similar to that of the Ultimate Martial Army, and he also had the token of the Duke of E residence on his waist. King of foreign lands, please forgive me. The person clasped his hands and bowed, his expression extremely respectful. This one has no ill intentions. I was only ordered to deliver an invitation. An invitation? Wang Chong's brow creased in surprise, but he managed to restrain his hostility. In the Battle of Talas, the Duke of E residence had dispatched 2,000 soldiers of the Ultimate Martial Army to assist Wang Chong and the Tang dynasty. If not for the help of the Ultimate Martial Army, victory might not have been so easily achieved. and the Wang clan had never had any dealings with the Duke of Residence. For the Duke of Residence to lend several thousand soldiers to Wang Chong based on a single letter, Wang Chong had to admire his breadth of mind and character. This one also does not understand. Your Highness will understand once you see it. The guard of the Duke of Residence took out an invitation with an azure cover. Holding it with both hands, he walked forward and respectfully handed it over. I understand. Thank the Duke of Residence for me, Wang Chong indifferently said. As he spoke, he took the invitation card from her. Although he was grateful for the Duke of Residence's kindness and assistance, he was in no mood to pay a visit. My lord, then this one will take his leave. No matter what, Lord Qin must take a look at this invitation. The guard of the Duke of Residence breathed a sigh of relief when he saw Wang Chong accept the invitation. As he spoke, he retreated, taking a deep glance at the invitation in Wang Chong's hand. Swoosh! In the end, the man leaped onto a treetop and disappeared in a few flashes. Wang Chong looked up at the sky. Dawn was not far away. Letting out a deep sigh, he quickly turned around and leaped toward the Wang family residence. Time slowly passed. In the study, Wang Chong was seated cross-legged, white streams of energy rising from his body. Wang Chong's face was ruddy, and his forehead was beaded with sweat. After some time, Wang Chong took a deep breath and slowly withdrew his energy. His complexion instantly improved. Lord Zhang, many thanks. This Crimson Soul pill was truly effective. Wang Chong looked at the imperial physician and said, My lord, there is no need to be so polite. Your martial arts are extremely profound, and your talent is extraordinary. As long as you rest for a while, you should be fine. The old imperial physician tidied up his medicine chest as he spoke to Wang Chong. Lord Zhang, many thanks. Wang Chong nodded, stood up and bowed. The old imperial physician quickly took his medicine chest and left the study. Meanwhile, Wang Chong walked to his desk, unfurled a sheet of Xian paper, and began to practice calligraphy. In a few more days, his 2 months of confinement would be over. During this time, Wang Chong did not need to attend court, nor could he interfere with the affairs of the Bureau of Military Personnel. Practicing calligraphy had become a way for him to pass the time and relax his mind. Lord Zhang, how is my son? After some time, just as Wang Chong was engrossed in his calligraphy practice, a voice came from the distance. Mother! Wang Chong immediately recognized the voice. Madam, I've already given His Highness the Crimson Soul pill. Following your orders, I haven't told His Highness the truth yet. Although His Highness appears normal on the surface, the knot in his heart is getting heavier and heavier. Compared to last time, His Highness's energy is clearly much more chaotic. This isn't good. If we don't think of a way to resolve His Highness's depression, I'm afraid that his condition will only worsen with each passing day. When the time comes, even this old man won't be able to do anything. A familiar voice drifted into her ears. It was the voice of Imperial Physician Zhang, who had just left. From this voice, it seemed like the two were speaking very far away, apparently to avoid Wang Chong. But someone of Wang Chong's cultivation level had no way of avoiding him. What do we do? Wang Chong's mother clearly did not know that he could hear their conversation, and she spoke from a distance, her mind fraught with worry. Su Shirshian Suki, all of you listen well. No matter what, Chong'er is not allowed to hear any news from the outside. Our Wang clan has already paid enough for the Tang dynasty. We don't owe this empire anything. Yes, madam. Her voice gradually faded away. Wang Chong's brush paused in the air as he sat there in a daze. At that moment, a complicated look flashed across his eyes. Then, he calmed down and continued to write on the paper. A heart needed medicine to cure it. But who could cure his heart? When a person was being slandered by the entire world, who could cure him? Chapter 1345. Whoosh! A gust of wind blew in through the window, ruffling the books in the room, and also a blue book on the table, causing it to clatter to the floor. Wang Chong bent down to pick it up, and the moment he touched it, he realized that it was the mysterious invitation that the Duke of Residence's guards had delivered that night. Wang Chong had no interest in visiting anyone, But just when he was about to place the letter back on the table, Wang Chong hesitated, patted the dust off the envelope, and took it back. "There's no harm in looking." Wang Chong sighed and slowly opened the invitation. The contents of the invitation were written in neat handwriting in a standard format. Duke of Yuchi Xiong to His Highness King of Foreign Lands. The King of Foreign Lands is devoted to his utmost, and is a model for the country. Although the people of the world have been deceived by fools, justice exists in the hearts of men, and right and wrong will be clear in the future. In addition, Yuchi has been entrusted by another to invite Your Highness to a gathering at the Violet Forest Park, in a small forest in the south of the city, on the 17th day of the 6th month, at the Z period. King of Foreign Lands, please be sure to attend. Entrusted by another? Wang Chong slightly creased his brow, his mind in turmoil. There was not much to this invitation, but the last part surprised Wang Chong. Wang Chong had originally believed that this letter was an invitation from the Duke of Yi, inviting him to the Duke of Yi residence. But it now appeared that this was not the case at all. Among the nobles, there had never been a case of someone writing an invitation on behalf of another. This was rather strange. Just who could have the Duke of Yi write an invitation on their behalf? Moreover, they're all in the capital, so if there's anything they can just do it themselves. Why would they need to invite someone else to do it? Wang Chong gripped the invitation, his mind in turmoil. The Duke of Yi's invitation was filled with strangeness. The person who had written the letter was not the person who had invited him, and even at the very end, the Duke of Yi had not said who the person was. He had never heard of such a strange invitation. Hee. Wang Chong shook his head and chuckled. He was about to put the invitation card back on the shelf. However, in the next moment, Wang Chong's eyes inadvertently glanced at the end of the invitation and saw an inconspicuous golden mark. His pupils abruptly shrank, as if he had been pricked by a needle, and his heart suddenly surged with great waves. This is how is this possible? Wang Chong stared at the golden mark on the lower right corner of the invitation, his eyes filled with disbelief. It was a ball of golden flames that looked like a lotus. Within the flames, there were 3 golden axes, and a 12-section mace. Boom! Wang Chong's heart tightened, and in that instant, he felt all the blood in his body rush up. His ears were ringing, and his mind was blank. How could it be them? At that moment, time seemed to stop. In the blink of an eye, countless thoughts surged through his mind. Wang Chong's heart could no longer remain calm. He had never imagined that, after a lifetime, he would once again see this most important mark in his life. In that instant, Wang Chong suddenly understood why the Duke of Yi had sent an invitation on behalf of someone else, and also why he had never revealed the other's identity in the invitation. If it was the them in his memories, then given their status, they would naturally be able to mobilize the Duke of Yi, and would naturally not reveal their identity. Because in people's memories, they no longer existed in this world. Putting down the invitation card, Wang Chong could no longer maintain his calm. No matter what, he had to go and see them. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, it was the 17th day of the 6th month. Deep in the night, the sky was pitch black, with only a few stars hanging high in the sky. At the appointed hour, Wang Chong, dressed in plain clothes, silently climbed over the wall without alerting anyone, all the way to the Violet Forest Park in the southern forest of the city. There the light was dim. A figure had been waiting there for a long time. It was the guard from the Duke of Yi residence. With him were several other members of the ultimate martial army from the Duke of Yi residence. Your Highness is truly trustworthy. Seeing Wang Chong, the guard from the Duke of Yi residence finally smiled. Follow me. With these words, he immediately turned his head and leapt onto a tree branch, swiftly descending into the depths of the forest. Without another word, Wang Chong rose from the ground and swiftly followed. Amidst the dim starlight, Wang Chong followed behind the group, twisting and turning as they advanced. The entire journey was silent, with no one speaking. The only sound was the chirping of night owls. After an unknown period of time, the group stopped in front of a dark forest. Your Highness is truly extraordinary. It's been so long. Have you not asked where we are going, or who we are meeting? The guard from the Duke of Yi residence turned his head and looked at Wang Chong. There's no need. Take me there. Wang Chong calmly said. The guards froze for a moment, and then they began to laugh. That's true. Given your highness's martial arts, how could you care about such things? With these words, the guards plunged into the dark forest, with Wang Chong quickly following. In the next moment, in the depths of the forest, an abandoned ancient temple appeared in front of them. The eaves of the ancient temple were very high, and the roof tiles were already broken. In the corners, there were layers upon layers of spider webs, and in the midst of the spider webs, statues of gods had fallen to the ground, and the ground was covered in dust. This is... Wang Chong was stunned by the sight of this ancient temple. He had been born and raised in the capital, and for 10-some years, he had lived the life of a hedonistic scion, wandering around with ruffians like Ma Zhou. There was nothing in the capital that he did not know, but Wang Chong had no impression of this place. He had no idea that there was such an abandoned temple in this forest. Rumble! As Wang Chong was thinking, the guard from the Duke of Yi residence stepped forward, bent down, and grabbed a metal ring from the ground. With a rumble, a massive tunnel appeared before Wang Chong's eyes. King of foreign lands, before you enter, there are a few things that I hope that you will remember. First, you cannot speak of tonight's events to anyone other than you, me, and the Duke of Yi residence. You cannot tell anyone else. In addition, you are not allowed to speak of this matter in the future. Even if you seek out our Lord Duke, he will never admit to it. Second, this tunnel can only be used once. Once it is used, the mechanism will be activated, and the tunnel will immediately collapse. Your Highness will not be able to come here again. When you meet them, Your Highness must remember not to ask about their identities. This is a great taboo. Your Highness, if you agree to these conditions, I will take you down. The Duke of Yi residence guard said. As he spoke, he gestured to the other two ultimate martial army soldiers. A moment later, the two ultimate martial army soldiers took out 3 torches from somewhere and quickly lit them with flint. Wang Chong said nothing, only firmly nodded. The leading guard heaved a sigh of relief. He turned around and took the torch from one of the guards. The two of you stand guard here. Don't let anyone get close. King of foreign lands, please follow me. As he spoke, he swiftly entered the tunnel. A few moments later, the Duke of Yi residence guard had vanished. Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong moved like a gust of wind, brushing past the two ultimate martial army soldiers as he followed them underground. If it were anyone else, Wang Chong would never have followed them so unreservedly. Once the tunnel collapsed, there was a high chance that he would be trapped underground. But this time was different. As long as the invitation card had that symbol, even if he had to climb a mountain of daggers or a sea of flames, Wang Chong would follow without hesitation. Wang Chong was confident that the people represented by that golden symbol would not have any intention of harming him. Wang Chong quickly caught up to the Duke of Yi residence guard. Gusts of wind blew at Zhang Xian's face as he descended the stairs. This underground passageway was much wider and cleaner than he had imagined. The tunnel twisted and turned, and gradually, not even Wang Chong could tell which way he was going. After some time, just when the torch in the Duke of Yi residence guard's hand was about to burn out, he finally stopped. Your Highness, we've arrived. Those people are waiting up ahead. I won't send Your Highness over. The Duke of Yi residence guard suddenly stopped and pointed forward, a look of utmost respect on his face. From a certain perspective, it had already surpassed the realm of respect, reaching the level of reverence and worship. But even so, Wang Chong did not find this strange. If it really was those people he was going to meet, it would not be excessive for them to show even the slightest bit of respect. Many thanks. Wang Chong nodded and looked in the direction the Duke of Yi residence guard was pointing. In the depths of the tunnel, he could faintly see a flicker of fire. Although Wang Chong did his best to remain calm, Wang Chong couldn't help but grow excited at this point. He could already smell a familiar scent in the air, a scent that he thought he had long since forgotten. Wang Chong brushed past the Duke of Yi residence guard, swiftly making his way toward the source of the fire. Wang Chong's pace was initially hurried, but gradually, when he was 20 to 30 steps away from the fire, Wang Chong's footsteps grew slower and slower. Fear of approaching home. On the outside, Wang Chong's heart had been filled with impatience for this reunion. But now that he was underground, and he was getting closer and closer, Wang Chong couldn't help but feel anxious and slow. Hiss! Wang Chong took a deep breath, forcefully suppressed his emotions, and calmly walked forward. Whoosh! Chapter 1346. The room was very large, but the interior was empty and devoid of any furniture. In the center of the room were 2 sandalwood armchairs. The room was quiet, and on the other side of the armchairs, Wang Chong could see a draped screen. Behind the screen, there was a fire. The light shone through the screen, illuminating a few burly figures. Each of them had a golden saber, and from their figures, it seemed that they were also sitting on the armchairs. Although these people were sitting motionless, they exuded a majestic and mighty aura that exploded out of their bodies like a storm and engulfed the entire room. Wang Chong had experienced mountains of corpses and seas of blood, and he had presided over large-scale battles like the War of the Southwest and the Battle of Talas, a formidable existence that could be described as a meat grinder. His body exuded an aura of iron and blood, but compared to the figures behind the screen and the flickering candlelight, he seemed much more immature. Wang Chong's aura was like a sharp sword, so sharp that it could cut through anything that stood in front of it. As for the figures behind the screen, they were like pieces of iron that had been hammered and forged countless times. They had become incomparably hard from the inside out. Not only did they possess the sharpness of swords, but they were also like imposing mountains that could withstand any kind of impact or strike. Wang Chong's aura of iron and blood was like the sun before the bright moon. More importantly, even though he couldn't see anything through the screen, Wang Chong was sure that these figures were the people he respected the most and was most grateful to in his life. Wang Chong couldn't help but feel his eyes moisten. Haha kid, I heard that you killed people without batting an eye and even 1 million. The outside world says that you're the demon king of slaughter. What? How can a man like you be weeping like a little girl? At this moment a voice sounded. This voice was coarse and old, but it also carried an unconcealable heroism that caused the entire room to tremble. Old scoundrel, what are you saying? Aren't you afraid of scaring these juniors? Almost at the same time, the candlelight behind the screen swayed, and another voice rang out. That voice carried wisdom from having experienced the vicissitudes of life, and it carried a comforting force as well. It's all right. Seniors are right. It was Wang Chong who lost his composure. Wang Chong rubbed his eyes and quickly calmed his emotions. Although Wang Chong was accused of being a little girl, he didn't care at all. Listening to those familiar voices and the familiar criticism, Wang Chong only felt a burst of warmth in his heart. To be able to meet them again in this life was already Wang Chong's greatest fortune. From the time he died in battle until now, Wang Chong could not remember how long it had been since he listened to their teachings and reprimands. The greatest regret in Wang Chong's life was to let them leave with regrets. He did not let them see the hope of the 9 states and let them down. Tears gushed out unconsciously. When they reached his eyes, they were forced back by Wang Chong. Haha kid, do you know why this old man is looking for you? The rough voice at the beginning laughed loudly and said, I heard that you were wronged in the imperial court, and the common people said that you are a murderous demon. What, you can't stand it? No. Wang Chong shook his head. Haha, that's good. This old man heard that you were wronged in the Tang dynasty, so I specially asked that old scoundrel to invite you here. As a man, what's wrong with being wronged? That's just a minor itch. As for being called a murderous demon by the common people, if this old man heard this kind of praise, he would definitely be happy for 3 days and 3 nights. If it were in this old man's era, killing 1 person is a crime, killing 10,000 is a hero, and killing 1 million is a hero among heroes. The more you kill, the more people will respect you. They say that you are a murderous demon. What are you dissatisfied with? The rough voice was full of heroism. From his mouth, Wang Chong's situation seemed to be the best praise in the world. Jijia. Hearing that person's voice, the wise voice sounded again, and there was a hint of reproach in it. It's fine if you are like this, but don't teach the younger generation bad things. In the last years of the Great Sui dynasty, who doesn't know of your reputation as a murderous demon? Kid, don't listen to his nonsense. This old man has also heard of your story. As you said, a real man only needs to have a clear conscience in life. As for whether others slander or praise you, it doesn't matter. A strong heart leads to self-improvement. This old man can see that your martial arts have reached a very high level. So you should also understand this truth. A real man only asks whether his actions are right or wrong. As for other people's opinions, even if you are misunderstood by the world, why should you care? One day, the clouds will be pushed aside, and the sun will shine brightly. People will understand your painstaking efforts. That person's voice was mellow, with a sense of inculcation. It was like the spring wind and rain, silently moisturizing everything. It blew into Wang Chong's heart, and soothed the wounds in his heart. Seniors, you are right. Wang Chong is wrong. Wang Chong's eyes were moist, and he lowered his head. At that moment, he felt like he had returned to the Doomsday era, back in that hall, and listened to the familiar teachings. Back then, when he was in dire straits and had lost everything, it was these seniors who brought him to the mountain, taught him martial arts, entrusted him with the world, and promoted him to the position of Grand Marshal. Seniors, Wang Chong muttered to himself. At that moment, it was as if he had returned to the past, and all the pain in his heart was soothed. Yes, if that senior was in his situation, no matter how big the misunderstanding and pain, he would not care. No matter how big the misunderstanding and pain, it became insignificant to him. Just like they said, a real man only asks whether his actions are right or wrong. Nothing else matters. It was he who had been bewildered. Child, I called you here to tell you something. At that moment, another old voice rang out. It was completely different from the previous two voices. What you have done is right, but no matter how big the misunderstanding, no matter how big the blame, don't take it to heart. What you want is nothing more than a clear conscience, and a clear conscience. Could it be that you want other people's understanding and approval? The last sentence had a hint of interrogative tone. Buzz! Like a bolt of lightning, Wang Chong's heart trembled, and he suddenly felt enlightened. Yes, he had been in this world for a long time, constantly struggling, and constantly working hard. In a trance, he had slowly forgotten his original intentions. He had never needed anyone's approval, nor did he need anyone's understanding. He had done all this because he wanted to, and not for anyone's understanding. Even if he was misunderstood by the whole world, even if he was condemned by the whole world, and called a murderous demon king, so what? Since this was not his goal from the start, there was no need to care. Behind the screen, the flames flickered. The three burly figures were as imposing as mountains. Although they did not show themselves, the three of them had been observing Wang Chong's reaction. Seeing that he seemed to have listened, they finally nodded slightly. Kid, it's good that you understand. When a man does things, he should not be ashamed of the heavens and the earth. How can he care so much? There are so many juniors in the Central Plains, but you are the only one I like the most. Those old fellows have lived for more than 100 years, and never meet anyone easily. If not for the fact that I heard that you are depressed, I wouldn't even want to meet you. The rough voice sounded in the room again. Thank you, senior. Wang Chong felt a lump in his throat as he said gratefully. Being able to see them again in this life, he had no regrets. Child, although Jijia is a rough person, his words are not rough. As the saying goes, when heaven is about to bestow a great responsibility on a person, it must first torture his will and grind his muscles and bones. You were born in a family of generals and ministers after the age of 9. You are talented, and have special achievements in the art of war. Although there were mountains of corpses and seas of blood along the way, it was very smooth, and you did not encounter any difficulties. A little setback is also a good thing. Only after washing away the lead can one see the real gold. As long as you don't get knocked down, you will become even more outstanding, the wise voice said at the side. Junior understands. Thank you for your teachings, senior. Wang Chong stood up and bowed respectfully. Kid, it's good that you understand. I thought you were a blockhead, and would have to spend a lot of effort. It seems that those children were right. You are quite smart. The rough voice laughed out loud. Jijia. The third rational voice suddenly sounded. There was a hint of blame in the voice, but it quickly turned around and looked at Wang Chong outside the screen. Child, in life, one cannot become a hero without going through hardships. As long as the world can be peaceful and prosperous, as long as you feel that what you are doing is right, that's enough. This junior has learned his lesson, Wang Chong replied. Haha, it's fate that we meet. Since you called us senior, we can't just call you that for nothing. We have to give you something. Otherwise, we will be laughed at to death. The rough voice said. Buzz. Before Wang Chong could react, the earth suddenly shook and the sky shook. 3 powerful and boundless spiritual forces suddenly locked onto Wang Chong. Before Wang Chong could react, the 3 powerful spiritual forces suddenly pulled and instantly dragged Wang Chong into a boundless spiritual world. Who? Before Wang Chong could react, a thunderous voice resounded in his ear. You bastards, you bastards, you bastards. Kid, watch carefully. The earth shook and the sky rumbled. Wang Chong looked back and saw that in the center of this world, 3 huge figures stood like mountains, emitting an endless aura of blood and fire. Chapter 1347. Golden Armor of 100 Battles. Right before Wang Chong's eyes, the burly figure spread his legs apart and raised his right hand above his head in an indomitable manner. Boom! As if a bolt of lightning had exploded, the world before Wang Chong's eyes seemed to have collapsed. Kill! In an instant, battle cries shook the heavens and the earth. On the cracked ground, countless soldiers charged out from every piece of land. They wore different armors and held up flags representing different forces. Like lightning, they charged out at an astonishing speed. Their targets were the 3 burly figures in the center of the entire land. Kill! The clouds of battle were fierce, and the flames burned fiercely. The flames soared tens of zhang into the air, and sand and pebbles flew everywhere. Tens of thousands of different iron cavalry roared and roared as they fought against each other. The clanging sounds of swords and armor rang out incessantly, and the 3 burly figures also disappeared in an instant. Looking from afar, Wang Chong could faintly see a few figures with resolute expressions amidst the flames. They wore the armor of generals and held halberds and spears in their hands. Under the frenzied attacks of tens of thousands of iron cavalry, they blocked left and right. In this endless torrent of steel, the 3 figures seemed incomparably lonely, like a small boat in the vast ocean. However, even so, the 3 of them gave off an incomparably powerful feeling. Countless horsemen charged forward, wave after wave, but the figures of the 3 of them were incomparably majestic, as if they were cast from steel, and did not waver in the slightest. As the countless iron cavalry charged forward, the wounds on the 3 increased. Even the armor on their bodies began to break, but the figures of the 3 were still incomparably resolute, as if there was nothing in this world that could make them waver. Boom! With a flash of light, the sky split open, and a huge banner descended from the sky, landing in the center of the 3. The banner fluttered, revealing a huge Tang character. Haha, come! In that instant, the voices of the 3 were incomparably majestic and heroic. Scarlet blood, loyal heart, forging loyal soul. Just as the battle reached its climax, the loud voice rang out once more. But this time it was the wise voice. Boom! The sky shook, and endless yellow sand broke apart. A huge iron fist covered in armor and covered in blood suddenly smashed towards Wang Chong. In that instant, the 3 burly black figures appeared once more before vanishing once more. Rumble! The world darkened, and everything he had just seen disappeared. When he opened his eyes again, the tens of thousands of cavalrymen had disappeared. The earth was dark, and the sky was dark. In front of him were tens of thousands of corpses. Countless soldiers had fallen to the ground, and even the blood flowing from their bodies had turned black. Wang Chong looked up and saw that in the center of the earth, the 3 peerless generals had long ago vanished. Only one of them remained, his back to the war banner. As the wind howled, the fluttering golden war flag had long become tattered. The huge war flag was already riddled with holes and had turned into strips. On the ground, the peerless general was covered in wounds. Countless arrows had pierced his body, and a black halberd had pierced through his abdomen and came out of his back. Blood dripped down, and the lacerated wound looked terrifying. However, the peerless general's eyes were firm, and he didn't even frown. He looked forward as if he was waiting for something. Kill. After an unknown period of time, the earth trembled. At the end of the earth, countless black-armored cavalrymen charged over like tigers and wolves. Even though the peerless general knew that he couldn't hold on, and even though he was facing the black-armored cavalrymen that covered the mountains and plains, he still didn't give up. Fight! With an earth-shattering roar, without any hesitation, the peerless general gripped his spear and charged toward the black-armored cavalrymen that covered the mountains and plains with an unstoppable momentum, undaunted in 100 battles and unbroken heart. At this moment the third old man spoke. Boom! A heavy war boot stomped down. In an instant, the earth trembled, and the mountains and rivers turned upside down. The three burly black figures appeared once again. Around them were blazing flames and endless yellow sand. Earth-shattering shouts rang out. Under the lead of a powerful general, 10 times the number of cavalrymen surged over like a surging river. However, this time, everything was completely different. Kill! With a loud shout, the sound of galloping hooves came from behind the trio. Nei! In the blink of an eye, a steed galloped out from behind the trio, followed by a second, a third, a fourth. Countless warhorses charged forward, passing the trio and clashing with the enemy troops from all sides. Clang! 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 Blade light and sword shadows were as dense as the tide. Countless cavalrymen were fighting and killing in this part of the world. There were people constantly falling, and there were people constantly surging out. They advanced wave after wave, and it was endless. After an unknown period of time, the vast sea of warriors could no longer be seen on the boundless earth. Countless corpses were strewn all over the ground. When the battle ended, dawn broke. A red sun slowly rose from the highest mountain peak. Everything between heaven and earth glowed with exuberant vitality. Green leaves, red flowers, and green grass gushed out from the ground, turning into endless beautiful mountains and rivers. At that moment, it was incomparably magnificent, and also incomparably magnificent. Wang Chong stared at all of this in a daze. At this moment, he seemed to see the entire process of an era going from destruction to prosperity, from decline to prosperity. Silently looking at the mountains and rivers that were becoming more and more magnificent, Wang Chong seemed to understand something. Brat, do you see this? No matter what kind of grievances you and I suffer, no matter what kind of setbacks we suffer, the world's temporary slander or praise is of no importance. Only the continuation and prosperity of the world is our greatest reward. The mountains and rivers are flourishing. There is no need for words. The sun and moon are bright, and the world is clear. If you want to see the flowers bloom and the moon shine, you need to have a heart that has been tempered 1,000 times. Brat, do you remember this? That rumbling sound echoed in his ears, and the illusion in front of him, everything suddenly disappeared. With a flash of light, Wang Chong returned to the underground room. Around him were neatly stacked stone bricks. Behind the screen, the light from the fire penetrated. The three burly figures stood majestically. They did not move at all. Looking closely compared to before, the three figures showed a hint of exhaustion. Obviously, they had used up a lot of energy in that moment. It was so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard. Brat, do you understand? The rough voice asked. Understood. Wang Chong answered. Brat, do you understand? The wise and farsighted voice spoke. Understood. Wang Chong said again. Ha! In an instant, the three of them burst into laughter. Brat, you are not born to be a fish in a pond. The Tang dynasty has been in crisis for a long time. Today's cause will be the result in the future. We old men are already old. In the future, the Tang dynasty and the world will depend on you. If you can understand what we mean, our meeting tonight will not be in vain. The wise voice of the old man said. Go. Whether it is martial arts or other things, we have nothing to teach you. Your future achievements will be above us. Remember, a sword is sharpened by sharpening, and the fragrance of plum blossoms comes from the bitter cold. The more slander you can bear, the more achievements you will have in the future. The third figure also said, the rise and fall of fate, separation and reunion. Our fate ends here. Remember, after today's events leave here. You are not allowed to tell anyone else. I will never disobey you, Wang Chong said sincerely. You can go now. Puff. Before the voice died away, the candlelight was extinguished, and the space behind the screen was suddenly plunged into darkness. Behind the screen, the mountainous and ocean-like aura of the three old men also receded like the tide, quickly becoming difficult to perceive. Wang Chong knew that the trio was expressing their stand on this matter, indicating for him to leave. I understand your painstaking efforts, seniors. Wang Chong finally stood up from his seat and suddenly knelt in the direction of the screen. A surprised voice suddenly came from behind the screen, but Wang Chong pretended not to hear it and respectfully kowtowed 3 times. In his previous life, he was naughty and mischievous. Most of his time was spent on learning martial arts and adapting to the position of the Grand Marshal of the world. He fought and resisted with them. When he finally understood their painstaking efforts, everything was over. He didn't even kowtow to them. Seniors, in your last life, you worked hard for your entire lives, using your broken bodies to prop up the world's mountains and rivers. In the end, you reached the end of your lives. In this life, let me take over your heavy responsibilities. After kowtowing 3 times, Wang Chong did not linger. He stood up, took one last deep glance behind him, and then swiftly returned in the direction he had come from. Milord, at the exit of the ancient temple, the leading Duke of Residence Guard and 2 other ultimate martial army soldiers raised their torches. When they saw Wang Chong emerge, the 3 sighed in relief. Your Highness, please keep tonight's events a secret. Do not speak of it to anyone. Wang Chong was in a daze, but he still nodded. Even without their repeated warnings, Wang Chong would not speak of it to anyone else. The identities of those 3 seniors could not be revealed no matter what. Whoosh! Wang Chong leaped forward and led the way out. The others quickly followed. Rumble! Just as he started running, the earth suddenly shook, and a series of explosions came from the depths of the earth behind him. Chapter 1348. Wang Chong was dazed for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. Using his movement technique, he began to make his way toward the Wang family residence. Behind him, the Duke of Residence Guard and the other 2 soldiers of the ultimate martial army separated from Wang Chong and vanished into the darkness. As he left the edge of the forest in the southern part of the city, a gust of wind blew past him. Wang Chong felt his body go cold, and he immediately became much more clear-headed. A bright moon had appeared in the sky at some point, and the surroundings were dark and quiet. As he gazed at the tranquil capital, Wang Chong suddenly felt like he was in a dream. Now that he thought about it, everything seemed so unreal. Even now, Wang Chong did not dare to believe that he had really met those venerable seniors. He looked around but saw no evidence that he had seen them, making him feel like he was in a dream. But when he took out that golden-covered invitation card and saw the golden symbol at the end, Wang Chong knew that he was not hallucinating. Moreover, in Wang Chong's memories, the only person who could be associated with this golden symbol was that peerless general from Taizong's era, Cheng Jijia. Suppressing his thoughts, Wang Chong immediately set out for the Wang family residence. Time passed, and after meeting those 3 seniors who had guided him in his last life, Wang Chong instantly felt much better. Just as those seniors had said, since this was not what he sought, what was there to care about? Even if he was slandered by the world, what was there to care about? Putting aside Wang Chong's activities in the residence, in the capital, after Master Zhu's death, Wang Chong's slander grew more and more intense. More and more storytellers in the restaurants and tea houses began to promote Confucian education, while criticizing Wang Chong's might makes right philosophy. Later on, criticizing Wang Chong had become a trend in the capital. But when things reached an extreme, they could only move in the opposite direction. While everyone was criticizing Wang Chong and calling him an ambitious schemer, a few people began to have different thoughts. Everyone now knows that the reason the Tang dynasty fought so many wars was because those generals were ambitious and constantly fought to satisfy their selfish desires. These people are truly the disgrace of our Tang dynasty. And the king of foreign lands, Wang Chong, took the lead. In a restaurant in the capital, a storyteller dressed in an azure robe danced around as he spoke, his eyebrows dancing in exultation. All right, below the grandstand, the crowd was densely packed. When they heard the resonance, they all cheered and applauded. This isn't right. A country should tolerate different voices. The king of foreign lands might have privately recruited soldiers or opened an armory, but his words were not wrong. The Tang dynasty should not be one-sidedly disarming its armies and place its hopes on peace talks with all sides. In the dense crowd, no one noticed that a burly man was slightly frowning. At the start, he truly had been infected by the frenzied crowd, but gradually, a different voice emerged from the depths of his mind. Might makes right. Law of the jungle. The strong prey on the weak. The ideas he had read in that book kept appearing in his mind. Even when he was at the height of his criticism of Wang Chong, they had not disappeared from his mind, only deepened. All of this is wrong. The man muttered to himself as he looked at the frenzied crowd, a complicated look in his eyes. Finally, he turned his head, parted the crowd, and left the restaurant. And he was not the only one with the same idea. In the Golden Crow Pavilion in the western part of the city, a storyteller staggered drunkenly into the restaurant. He was the main storyteller of the Golden Crow Pavilion, and every time he came to tell a story, it would always be packed with guests. In particular, with the recent conflict between militarists and Confucians, almost all the storytellers had made a fortune. Shopkeeper, it's time to open, time to open. Tell them that today's program is about to begin. A drunken storyteller dressed in a robe was preparing to start his storytelling program as usual. Although he liked to drink, he was always eloquent when telling stories. This was one of the reasons why he was so popular in the western part of the city. My apologies, Mr. Zhang. We're closed for the day and won't be telling stories. But this time, before he could go over, a servant from inside the Golden Crow Tower had already walked over and blocked his way. What? You must be joking. Do you know what will happen to you once I tell your shopkeeper about your nonsense? Zhang Qiao, who was dressed in a long robe, burped and cursed as he pushed his way forward. Mr. Zhang, you really can't go in. He hadn't expected the servant to turn around and block his way again. Also, this is the shopkeeper's intention. What? Zhang Qiao's body trembled, and he suddenly stopped. He looked at the servant sober up. Impossible. The shopkeeper can't do this. Do you know how much business you'll lose each day I don't tell stories? Zhang Qiao said harshly. He had thought that the other would more or less yield, but the result was completely different from what he had imagined the prime minister to be. Haha. The shopkeeper said that he can afford this kind of loss. Mr. Zhang, you should go somewhere else. The servant bowed and gestured for Zhang Qiao to go somewhere else. Good. Remember, don't regret it. Zhang Qiao finally reacted and shouted into the Golden Crow Pavilion with a glare. Then with a wave of his sleeve, he left in a fluster. Once the storyteller had left, a figure walked out of the darkness of the Golden Crow Pavilion. Shopkeeper, Mr. Zhang's storytelling is famous throughout the capital. Isn't it bad for us to drive him away like this? The restaurant will probably lose quite a few customers this time. The servant said as he walked up to the shopkeeper of the Golden Crow Pavilion, deep concern in his eyes. Let him be. The shopkeeper stood in front of the door, his eyes abnormally firm. The voices in the capital criticizing the king of foreign lands are getting louder and fiercer. I don't know if the king of foreign lands is right, but I do know that he truly did save the Southwest and all of Anqi and Qixi. Such a person shouldn't be humiliated like this, and what he says might not be wrong. But he did not say the last words. In this period of time, the voices of peace and opposition to the war in the capital were getting louder and louder. In this environment, no one dared to say anything else, but deep in his heart, he knew that some of the words spoken about the king of foreign lands were not true. After pondering for a very long time, he finally made his decision. The entire country needed someone to speak up. Perhaps this would cause him to lose a lot of business, but if he didn't do this, he would never be able to eat or sleep in peace. At the very least, This was what he truly believed. Time passed, and it was as if he had suddenly woken up from a dream. As countless people threw themselves into the anti-war movement, another kind of thought was slowly awakening. Although no one could resist the influence of Master Zhu, no one could oppose this tide. More and more people were beginning to reflect, and in their own ways, they began to express their support for Wang Chong. This was also the thinking of the empire. In the capital, it was not just this restaurant that stopped storytelling and prohibited storytellers from entering. While everyone was cheering wildly and sinking into a frenzy, there was also more than one person who turned around and left amidst intense shouts. Master Zhu isn't necessarily right. We should make our voices heard. In the bamboo forest, several Confucians had gathered together, and one of them suddenly spoke. If these words were to get out, they would immediately cause a massive uproar. Master Zhu's status was unshakable, perhaps even supreme. There was no other voice to be heard in the school, and no student dared to argue with their teacher. But everyone knew that even saints could make mistakes, let alone Master Zhu. The Central Plains had a tradition of civil and military coexisting for more than 1,000 years, and there had to be a reason why this system had existed for so long. But the current Confucianism was no longer promoting Confucian ideals, but uprooting the militarists from their roots. If the barbarians paid particular attention to benevolence and honored their promises, the world would have been at peace long ago. I trust that everyone understands what's going on with the king of foreign lands. If he really did harbor ill intentions, the Holy Emperor would never have tolerated him. A person who has rendered great service to the country should not be humiliated like this. Only this is justice. Another Confucian seated cross-legged on the ground said, "It's not just that. All of you have read Might Makes Right. Everyone should understand whether or not the words in it are correct and reasonable. Right now, everyone is in an irrational state. If this continues, something will happen sooner or later." A third Confucian said, glancing at the pile of Might Makes Right in front of him. The more one debated, the clearer it became. There was no such thing as warmth in the relationship between countries. The principles of the King of Foreign Lands book had been verified countless times in the past. It was precisely because they had all read it that the book was correct, and had hit the nail on the head that they had gathered here. Because they shared a common point of view, they had gathered together. We have to do something. This can't continue. The people in the bamboo forest glanced at each other and firmly nodded. Their reactions were already very fast, but there were others who reacted even faster. A few days later, several anonymous books were published in the capital, appearing on the streets. On the correctness of Might Makes Right, the law of the jungle, and relations between countries. These books used their own methods to interpret Wang Chong's Might Makes Right and the war debate, and they used their own methods to support him. We want peace, not war. Bring down the king of foreign lands. Bring down the demon king of slaughter. What difference is a man from a beast without etiquette? Might Makes Right is a load of nonsense. Reduce the army. We don't want an army. The storm outside was kept out by the high walls of the Wang clan's courtyard, and not a single sound could be heard. Wang Chong could still hear the protests outside during the day, but after that night in the stone room, Wang Chong had let go of everything and felt much better. There was no joy in obtaining and no worry in losing. The current Wang Chong was unfazed by favor or disgrace, treating everything with a calm attitude. Flowers bloomed and wilted, clouds gathered and dispersed. None of these things were that important to her, because deep in her heart, Wang Chong had obtained the peace that she desired. Whoosh! At some point, Wang Chong had once more arrived in front of that high wall. With a leap, Wang Chong landed on the top of the wall like a bird and landed lightly on the other side of the wall. Ever since that night, Wang Chong had slowly developed the habit of going out alone at night, when there was no one around. As usual, Wang Chong walked forward with his hands behind his back, dressed in plain clothes. The night breeze blew away many of his worries. Just as Wang Chong was slowly walking a distance away, a black shadow suddenly darted out of the darkness and pounced at Wang Chong. "Big brother, this stick of candied hawthorn is for you." Before Wang Chong could get a clear look, an extremely young voice sounded in his ear. Looking at it, a bright-colored stick of candied hawthorn appeared in Wang Chong's eyes. This sudden scene caused everyone to be extremely astonished. Wang Chong lowered his head and looked carefully. He saw a child less than 10 years old, holding a stick of candied hawthorn in his hand, and looking at him with an extremely serious expression. Wang Chong was inwardly flabbergasted. He had been strolling around this area for several days now, but he had never seen anything like this. Moreover, it was already late at night, so for a child to suddenly appear on the street was rather strange. "Little friend, do you know who I am?" Wang Chong slightly bent down and rubbed the child's head as he smiled. This was most likely someone's child mistaking someone else for someone else. But a moment later, the child's words left Wang Chong flabbergasted. "Of course I know. You're the king of foreign lands," the child said in his childish voice, showing no sign of backing down. These words caught Wang Chong by surprise, and it made him feel even more perplexed. This child who had appeared in the middle of the night was simply too strange in his words and actions. "How did you know that I would be here?" Wang Chong softly said. "When you returned to the capital last time, Father and I went to see you, so I recognized you. I've seen you quite a few times in the last few nights, and every time, you would pass by this place." The boy raised his head and solemnly said. Wang Chong froze, momentarily at a loss for words. He had never imagined that while no observant person had noticed him going out for a stroll at night, it had been seen by a child. And the child had even given him a stick of tonghulu. Wang Chong subconsciously took it, an indescribable feeling in his heart. "They all say that you're a demon king of slaughter, but I know that you're not. You're a great hero. You only kill enemies." While Wang Chong was still in a daze, the boy raised his head and said something that left Wang Chong's mind reeling. After saying this, the little boy ran away like a wisp of smoke. He went into the alley and disappeared. Buzz! At this moment, Wang Chong felt like an electric current was surging through his heart. He stood there in a daze, staring in the direction the boy had disappeared in, unable to say a single word. After so many days and nights of slander and abuse, Wang Chong hadn't expected that the first words of comfort and support he would hear would come from a boy who hadn't even reached the age of 10. The night was cold and chilly, but Wang Chong felt warmth in his heart. In the capital of 1 million people, the support of a boy was insignificant, but to Wang Chong, this was the first ray of light that had shone into his heart. Although this light was small, it was not weak. Sometimes it was enough to feel a sincere support from others. At least in this empire, there are still people who support me. At this moment, Wang Chong could not help but sigh. With a wave of his robe, Wang Chong took the stick of tonghulu and continued forward. After an unknown period of time, there was a sudden change. "Who goes there?" As the wind blew past, Wang Chong's eyes chilled as he turned his head to a dark corner by the wall. All was quiet, and there was nothing around. It was like Wang Chong was imagining things. Still not coming out?" Wang Chong's expression chilled as he extended the index and middle fingers of his right hand. Without a moment's thought, a violet flame shot out of his fingers and shot into the black figure like a shooting star. The fire of Luwu. This was one of Wang Chong's most powerful techniques. Once it was attached to him, it would be very difficult to destroy. Swoosh! As the violet flame flew into the dark corner, a figure shot into the sky like a sparrow hawk, narrowly dodging Wang Chong's attack. "Ha ha ha, king of foreign lands. I heard that after being caught up in the militarists and Confucians, the flames of your heart have been stifled and your strength has plunged. Even the imperial physicians have seen you several times. It seems like the rumors aren't true." 20-some paces away from Wang Chong, a black-clothed figure stood on the wall. His face was covered in a mask, and his body was covered in black flames. A large piece of leather flapped in the wind on his back, and his entire body exuded an aura as powerful as that of a vast ocean. The mysterious black mask on his face, and the roiling black smoke exuding from his body, made him seem even more mysterious in the darkness. "It's you!" Wang Chong grimaced as he took out a black metal box from his bosom. At this moment, The jewel at the top of the box was scorching hot, exuding a scorching green light that was dazzling in the darkness. The square metal box given to him by the Sindhi high priest would only respond to one kind of person, those mysterious men in black of unknown origins. At the same time, they were the gods mentioned in the Book of Paimon in the underground caves of the Sassanid dynasty. Haha, that old scoundrel beneath Sindhi truly does favor you. He actually gave you something like this. Alas, even if you take this, you'll still die tonight. The black-clothed man's eyes were sinister, and as he spoke, he spread open his arms, the black cloak on his back unfurling like wings. Whoosh! A black fog remained in the air, but the black-clothed man had already vanished with astonishing speed. It was like he had become invisible. Not only that, but in an instant, that person's aura disappeared without a trace. Not even the slightest bit of it could be felt. It was as though he had stepped into another world from this world. Even Wang Chong couldn't help but widen his eyes at this sight. This person was extremely powerful. Boom! Chapter 1350. Boom! With a massive explosion and roiling black smoke, the black-clothed man's cape flapped in the wind as he suddenly appeared in that previously empty place. He crossed his hands, the thick black flames transforming into a shield that blocked Wang Chong's sharp sword chi. It seems that the rumors were not exaggerated at all. My void movement technique is as fast as lightning and incomparably exquisite. No one has ever been able to calculate my movements. You are the first to render my void movement technique ineffective. The black-clothed man's robes flapped in the wind, his eyes flashing with a strange light. His void movement technique was silent and undetectable. In battle, the position he attacked was completely different from the position of his true body. By relying on this unique ability, in the past, he would have been able to kill his opponents in a single blow. But in front of Wang Chong, it was completely ineffective. It's useless. No matter what technique it is, it won't have much effect on me. Wang Chong indifferently said, in no hurry to pursue. Ever since he had touched upon the subtle realm and seen through the origin of energy, movement techniques and footwork techniques no longer had any mysteries to them. As long as he moved, he would leave a mark on the origin of energy. To Wang Chong, these marks were as clear as the sun and moon. Bang! Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong shot forward like a bolt of lightning at the black-clothed man. Rumble! The earth quaked and the sky swayed. At the same time, all the energy in a radius of 100 jong was thrown into chaos. In the boundless darkness, a sun and a moon suddenly appeared at the same time. Great Yin-Yang Heaven Creation Art. Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong instantly used this world-shaking supreme art. Under Wang Chong's effect, everything in the surroundings seemed to be pulled by thousands of ropes. Bang! A section of the wall was unable to endure this force and was pulled into the air by Wang Chong's explosive pull. Countless bricks danced in the air like tree branches, and within 100 meters of Wang Chong, the black-clothed man had to endure the greatest pull. 90% of Wang Chong's great Yin-Yang Heaven Creation Art strength was focused on him. Buzz! Sensing this enormous power, the black-clothed man's expression immediately changed. Without the slightest hesitation, the stellar energy in his body exploded, and his entire body suddenly became as slippery as a thick loach. In an instant, he escaped the suction force and disappeared. Impossible! Sensing this change, even Wang Chong's expression changed slightly. Of all the opponents he had faced, no one had ever used such a method to escape his great Yin-Yang Heaven Creation Art. I'd like to see how many tricks you guys have up your sleeves. With a single thought from Wang Chong, the great Yin-Yang Heaven Creation Art underwent a heaven-toppling transformation. The originally simple suction force instantly split into dozens of different directions and strengths. Sometimes they would clash with each other, but at the same time, they would coordinate with each other. Not only that, but in the blink of an eye, a net formed by pure suction force suddenly burst forth, and it fiercely enveloped a position diagonally behind Wang Chong. Everything was too much for the eyes to take in, and everything was completed in an instant. How could this be? Sensing the changes in the surrounding air and the suction force that was dozens of times more complex than before. Even the black-clothed man couldn't help but widen his eyes in shock. Logically speaking, Wang Cheng's great yin-yang heaven creation art should have been ineffective against him, but Wang Cheng's battle skills and control over this art had already reached a frightening level. While maintaining the same nature and ability, he had made this art countless times more complex and powerful. Boom! In the blink of an eye, a thick black flame, almost solid and viscous, shot out of the black-clothed man's body and collided with the giant suction net that Wang Cheng had created. In an instant, there was an earth-shattering explosion. The air exploded and boundless energy spread out in all directions. The air in a radius of several hundred zhang rippled like the waves of the sea. The surrounding walls completely shattered, and the roofs of the nearby shops were blown away. This violent explosion caused cries of alarm in the darkness, and the lights in the houses of innumerable families lit up. Some of the commoners nearby even rushed out of their houses in a flurry, fleeing far away from the battlefield. Sensing the commotion and changes in the darkness, Wang Cheng's expression changed, a sharp killing intent flashing through his eyes. He had already used the great yin-yang heaven creation art to limit the power of their battle and reduce the range of its shockwaves, but it had still caused significant damage. Moreover, such a large disturbance would quickly attract the attention of the city guard and other patrolling Imperial Army soldiers. He needed to end this battle as quickly as possible. Now it's my turn. A cold light flashed in Wang Cheng's eyes as he split into three, transforming into three phantoms that shot toward the black-clothed man from three different directions. The black-clothed man was stunned by this sight. He had not expected such a transformation at all, and these three phantoms were exactly the same. Not only that, but the auras they exuded were also exactly the same. Even with his strength, he was unable to tell them apart. Before he could react, the three phantoms, one on the left and one on the right, joined forces with the phantoms in front of him to launch a pincer attack. Heavenly Protector, Black Flame Azura. In a flash, black flames dozens of times the size of the previous ones exploded from the black-clothed man's body. Roar! A heaven-shaking roar that seemed to come from the depths of hell, filled with incomparable savagery and savagery. In the blink of an eye, the black-clothed man had vanished, replaced by a massive and dignified black-armored god. Its eyes were glaring, and its body seemed to be cast from copper and iron as it rose from the ground. Rumble! As soon as the black-armored black flame god appeared, its 6 muscular arms, wrapped in destructive energy, smashed into the 3 phantoms that Wang Cheng had created. At that moment, Wang Cheng could clearly see that there was a head growing out of this god's back. Azura, the legendary demon gods of hell, possessed 2 faces and were extremely terrifying existences. This was the first time Wang Cheng had encountered an existence that could use this kind of supreme technique. But without the slightest hesitation, the sun and moon phantoms were destroyed, and at the same time, a vast and unstoppable energy burst forth from the void. Great destruction art. In a flash, Wang Cheng's dantian exploded as he used the highest level of the 3rd layer of the great yin-yang heaven creation art. Time was of the essence, and the city guard and imperial army could arrive at any moment. Wang Cheng used this technique in hopes of capturing this black-clothed man in the shortest time possible, dead or alive. Rumble! 2 enormous energies fiercely collided. Although the black flames were endless and tyrannical, they could not stop the power of the great destruction art. Pung pung pung. With a miserable howl, the Azura's 6 iron-like arms were first broken at the base. Then, in the face of that pure destructive power, his entire body was sent flying and disintegrated in midair. Bang! As the Azura was sent flying, Wang Cheng's eyes flashed with cold light. He leapt into the air, his body flickering as he appeared at the black-clothed man's side. His 5 fingers moved like lightning, grabbing the black-clothed man's shoulder. Great yin-yang heaven creation art. Without the slightest hesitation, the moment his opponent was heavily injured, Wang Cheng used the greatest power of this evil path's secret art. In a flash, the black-clothed man's stellar energy flowed like water from a broken dam into Wang Cheng's body. At such a close distance, there was almost no one in the world who could resist Wang Chang's great yin-yang heaven creation art. In a flash, the black-clothed man finally revealed an expression of extreme fear. Not only that, under the effects of the great yin-yang heaven creation art, his entire body was immobilized and completely under Wang Chang's control. In a few short moments, Wang Chang's energy surged like a rising river, while the black-clothed man's energy plummeted. A strange stellar energy that was completely different from any known art, along with the strange energy of the black flames, surged into Wang Chang's body. After interacting with these black-clothed men for so long, Wang Chang slowly realized that their art and energy were very unique. This could also be said to be one of their major characteristics. Such powerful energy, Wang Chang quietly said to himself. This black-clothed man clearly had an extraordinary status, and the energy in his body was also extremely high. He hadn't noticed this black energy at the start, but now that he was absorbing it, Wang Chang could clearly sense that this energy was no less tyrannical than the fire of Lu Wu and the fire of Ju Bai. Something's wrong. At the moment when the energy was being devoured, Wang Chang instinctively sensed that something was wrong. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed that the black-clothed man, whose face had been covered in fear, was now smiling as if his scheme had succeeded. Not good. Alarmed, Wang Chang knew that something was wrong. But before he could react, a ball of unprecedented black flame energy surged out of the black-clothed man's body and into Wang Chang's. This energy seemed to be familiar with the meridians of the great yin-yang heaven creation art in Wang Chang's body. Through an ingenious method, it narrowly avoided Wang Chang's obstruction and crashed into Wang Chang's dantian, creating massive waves. Bang! At almost the same time, an enormous energy exploded between the black-clothed man and Wang Chang, pushing the two apart. Haha kid, you're truly difficult to deal with. Not only have we failed to kill you, we've even let you absorb quite a few of our arts. The fire of Lu Wu, the fire of Ju Bai, and the fire of Mara. Your body now contains 3 of our energies. But did anyone tell you that these 3 flames are incompatible and can't be cultivated at the same time? And that's not even considering how many other arts you've cultivated. Just wait for your cultivation to go berserk. This time, even without us doing anything, you're dead. Chapter 1351. You're seeking death. Wang Chang flew into a rage. No matter how slow he was, he still understood what was going on. Everything had been planned by the black-clothed man. He had intentionally allowed himself to be captured, so that the black fire of Mara could burn into Wang Chang's body. I don't have time to fight with you. Just obediently wait for your cultivation to go berserk and your body to explode. The black-clothed man sneered. Before Wang Chang could reach him, his body swayed, and he instantly vanished. It's just up ahead. Hurry. Don't let them get away. Wang Chang had barely taken 2 steps when he suddenly heard the neighing of men and horses in the distance. Countless soldiers were galloping in his direction. Not only that, the commotion caused by their clash was so great that it had alarmed the experts of the city guard and the imperial army. As far as Wang Chang could see, soldiers were surging in from almost every direction. I'll spare your life for now. Crack. Wang Chang clenched his fists, his eyes flickering with uncertainty. Finally he endured it. His current status was far too special. If he was discovered by so many people of the city guard and imperial army, it would quickly cause a huge debate in the imperial court tomorrow. At a time when the conflict between militarists and Confucians was at its most intense, this was not a wise move. Bang! Wang Chang immediately headed in the direction of the Wang family residence. The black-clothed man was right. The 3 flames clashed with each other, incompatible with each other, and they were currently violently clashing in his body. There's no time. I have to hurry back. Wang Chang pushed the energy in his body to the limit, and immediately vanished before the city guard and imperial army could meet up. As Wang Chang vanished, the black-clothed man who had just vanished once more reappeared in the air above a house not far from the site of the battle. However, his face was pale and his forehead was beaded with cold sweat. He was no longer as calm and composed as he had been a moment ago. This brat is even more difficult to deal with than the legends say. It's fine if the void escape is useless against him, but I actually almost died in his hands. The man in black looked in Wang Chong's direction and gritted his teeth. When he first received the order, he was a little dissatisfied. He was just an ordinary king in the human world. Why did they have to go through so much trouble? They even had to take the initiative to let him absorb the fire of Mara and cause him to go berserk. That was why he took the initiative to attack when he encountered Wang Chong, and even used the Black Flame Azura. However, he hadn't expected that even the Black Flame Azura would be no match for him. What was even more unfortunate was that according to the plan, he only needed to absorb 40% of the fire of Mara. However, in the end, 70% of the fire of Mara was actually absorbed by Wang Chong, causing his strength to plummet. If he did not leave now, Wang Chong would most likely die here before his cultivation went berserk. Bastard! This time, I'm afraid I won't be able to recover without at least half a year's worth of effort. The man in black's eyes were filled with hatred. The sound of hooves grew closer and closer. On top of the house, the man in black did not dare to be careless. Before the Imperial Army and the city guard could surround him, he quickly fled into the distance and disappeared into the night. On the other side, Wang Chong was as fast as lightning, flying through the night. In just a moment, the stellar energy in Wang Chong's body clashed and immediately became extremely chaotic. 3 different types of extremely pure flames collided in his body like dragons and tigers, and they quickly affected all the stellar energy in Wang Chong's body. Like a flame thrown into a barrel of gunpowder, Wang Chong's body immediately underwent an earth-shattering change. From the true martial realm to the peak of the Saint Martial realm, Wang Chong had absorbed countless different kinds of energy. These energies continued to accumulate in Wang Chong's body. At the beginning, it did not matter, but after reaching a certain level, the quantitative change turned into a qualitative change, immediately burying a bomb in Wang Chong's body. And the man in black's fire of Mara completely detonated this bomb. Drip! A drop of sweat the size of a bucket slid down his face, dripped onto his palm, and fell to the ground. 1 drop, 2 drops, 3 drops. More and more sweat seeped out of Wang Chong's forehead. Without even looking, Wang Chong knew that his face was extremely pale. Even worse, under the effect of the black flames, the 8 extraordinary meridians in Wang Chong's body were simultaneously being torn apart and clashed by nearly 1,000 different kinds of stellar energy. A heart-wrenching pain came from every part of his body. Wang Chong did his best to suppress it, using his profound understanding and exquisite control of the origin of qi to try to guide it into his dantian. But Wang Chong could sense that he was about to lose control. I have to hurry back. Not far away, a mansion lay in front of him. It was not far from the Wang family's mansion. With a leap, Wang Chong flipped over the wall of the Wang family's courtyard and quickly entered the study without alerting anyone. Rumble! The moment Wang Chong sat down cross-legged, an enormous energy exploded from Wang Chong's body. Bzzz. At almost the same time, violet, purple-black, and black flames swept out of Wang Chong's body like whirlwinds. Swish! Touched by these flames, the table, chair, bookcase, potted plants, brush, ink, everything in the study was instantly turned to ash. Even the stone tiles under Wang Chong's feet were pulverized, leaving behind a large scorch mark. Wang Chong clenched his teeth, his face growing paler and paler. Upon returning to the study, Wang Chong could no longer suppress the chaotic stellar energy in his body and fiercely erupted. Back in Qixi, when Wang Chong received the news of the retreat, he had vomited blood and fallen unconscious. At that time, his great yin-yang heaven creation art was already showing signs of cultivation defect. At the time, he had been able to suppress it, and it had not been serious. But later on, during the conflict between militarists and Confucians, it had only gotten worse, and these men in black had clearly noticed this, which was why they had come up with this plan. They would intentionally get close to Wang Chong and detonate the great yin-yang heaven creation art in his body. This method would kill 1,000 enemies while suffering 800 casualties, but it was the best way to deal with Wang Chong. Wang Chong's face grew paler and paler, and more sweat appeared on his forehead. The pain was so excruciating that Wang Chong's feet were soaking the ground. The thousands of different energies clashing in his body made him feel like his entire body was being torn apart, his flesh peeling off. Whoosh! At the moment when the stellar energy in his body was at its most intense, Wang Chong opened his mouth and vomited a mouthful of blood. After vomiting this mouthful of blood, Wang Chong gave a long sigh. A hint of color finally returned to his ghastly pale face, and his breathing became much calmer. I've finally managed to suppress it for now. Wang Chong opened his eyes, a hint of worry in them. That mouthful of blood just now had seemed severe, but it was actually a special method to expel the stellar energies that were most violently conflicting and incompatible with each other from his body. If they could not be dissolved, then forcing them out was the best way to deal with them. But this would only treat the symptoms and not the root cause. If he could not completely resolve the problem of the great yin-yang heaven creation, art absorbing the various types of energy, this situation would repeat itself. I have to think of a way to resolve this problem, Wang Chong said to himself. The great yin-yang heaven creation, art was the number evil art of the evil path, the strongest art of the evil path. The only thing that could suppress it was the legendary supreme and infinite origin immortal art. But though the great yin-yang heaven creation art was powerful, its weakness was also obvious. The problem of incompatible energies. This was why his master, the evil emperor, had been plagued by this problem, his cultivation method crippled, his dantian destroyed, and his traitorous disciple pursued him. But even though his master had cultivated for so many years, this problem had only erupted in his 50s. Wang Chong had only been cultivating for 2 years, but he was already facing a similar problem. And from a certain perspective, it was probably even more serious. After all, not even the evil emperor had been like Wang Chong, wantonly slaughtering on the battlefield. He had absorbed so many top-class generals, even brigadier generals, and peak Saint Marshal great generals. And he had even comprehended the origin of energy. But it was precisely because of this that the problem had become even more severe. Thump thump thump. As he was thinking, there was a rapid knocking on his door, accompanied by the uneasy voices of Su Shixian and the others. "Milord, are you all right? Milord, are you all right?" The two seemed to have heard the commotion outside and hurried over. "I'm fine." Wang Chong's eyes flashed, and he quickly came back to his senses. Gently wiping the blood from his lips, he stood up and walked out the door. Time slowly passed, and soon the 2 months of confinement were over. Wang Chong had finally regained his freedom. This should have been a cause for celebration, but even Su Shixian and Su Qi sensed that something was wrong. For some reason, Wang Chong's aura was growing weaker and his complexion paler. This was completely different from the impression that Wang Chong had given them in the past. Not only that, Wang Chong was spending more and more time alone in his study, accompanied by strange phenomena. Su Shixian and Su Qi had both visited Wang Chong's study and seen the completely incinerated mark, but Wang Chong had never mentioned it, so they didn't ask. They could only worry. Swish! Early in the morning, as Wang Chong was walking to the back garden, a sharp awl suddenly shot toward Wang Chong with a gust of wind. The awl didn't look very eye-catching, but it contained a huge destructive power. Bang! When it was still several dozen feet away from Wang Chong, a thick energy suddenly appeared, transforming into a steel-like barrier that blocked the awl. Ding! The awl fell to the ground, but there was no more movement. This was the 4th time. Chapter 1352. Damn it! Why isn't this kid dead yet? In a place that Wang Chong could not see, a black figure was running along the wall like a leopard. But a moment later, a burst of stellar energy appeared out of nowhere. The figure crashed into it and stopped. "I've been waiting for you for a long time." A majestic voice filled with disdain suddenly resounded in his ears. The black shadow was startled, and his eyes suddenly widened, revealing a look of fear. Ah! A moment later, a shrill scream pierced through the sky, and then came to an abrupt stop. This is... In the rear courtyard, Wang Chong was just about to leave when he heard the scream and stopped. Bang! A moment later, a black figure landed heavily in front of Wang Chong. This figure was dressed in black, and clearly belonged to the faction of the black-clothed men. How long has this been going on? A familiar voice, old and powerful, resounded in his ears. Wang Chong raised his head, and saw a familiar figure standing on the high walls of the rear courtyard, dressed in a loose robe, and with a head of long hair that danced in the wind. "Master!" Wang Chong called out in surprise. The figure on the high wall was none other than his master, the evil emperor. Whoosh! With a gust of wind, his master, the evil emperor, vanished from sight. When he reappeared, he was already several steps away from Wang Chong, and he was completely unruffled. "It's already been 4 or 5 days. Wang Chong hesitated for a moment, but he knew that he could not hide it from his master's eyes. "Why didn't you inform me that something this big had happened?" The evil emperor said angrily. If Su Shixian and the others had not told him, he probably would not have known. Wang Chong smiled bitterly. "Yes, your disciple knows his mistake. The great Yin-Yang Heaven creation arts flaw had been around for a long time, and even his master had not been able to resolve it. Wang Chong's original intention was to not worry his master, so he had kept it a secret. But now it seemed like it had backfired. Buzz! With a straight face, the evil emperor took a step forward. His 5 fingers shot out from his sleeves at lightning speed like a snake, and rested on Wang Chong's shoulder. With just a touch of his finger, the evil emperor's expression changed. From what he could sense, it was as if there were 3 venomous beasts inside Wang Chong's body that were constantly nibbling away at his life force. The evil emperor had thought that Wang Chong had only just acted up, and the situation wasn't that serious. But from the looks of it now, that wasn't the case at all. How is this possible? The evil emperor muttered to himself, his expression turning solemn. It had only been 4 days since Wang Chong's great Yin-Yang Heaven creation art had flared up, but the severity of it was already comparable to the later stages of his illness. This was not a normal occurrence, and there were strong indications that it was man-made. The scarlet tail and scorched tail are 2 of the greatest taboos of the great Yin-Yang Heaven creation art. Those who aren't from our lineage would never know of them. How could anyone possibly know of the existence of these 2 acupoints? The evil emperor muttered to himself, his expression turning more and more solemn. Those who cultivated the great Yin-Yang Heaven creation art had 2 acupoints on their body that were insignificant to ordinary people, but to cultivators, they were a great taboo. This was especially so when the great Yin-Yang Heaven creation art reached an extremely high level and began to reveal its flaws. If one were to touch these 2 acupoints, it could easily cause a clash of stellar energy, causing a severe disorder in the stellar energy, and eventually leading to a cultivation deviation. But these 2 acupoints were not easily touched, and ordinary people would never know of them. Who did you meet? Tell me everything from start to finish, no matter how big or small. The evil emperor said grimly. Ever since Wang Chong had come into contact with the evil emperor, he had never seen his master so solemn. Wang Chong did not dare to tarry, and immediately recounted everything that had happened. Impossible, this can't be possible. After hearing Wang Chong's story, the evil emperor was completely stunned, as if he had encountered a great mystery. Master, was it senior brother? Wang Chong asked. His master had more than one disciple. Wang Chong subconsciously thought of his senior brother, who had betrayed his master. He was probably the only one who knew the great Yin-Yang Heaven creation art like the back of his hand, and had even told the black-clothed man about it. Impossible. Unless one has cultivated the great Yin-Yang Heaven creation art to this level, there's no way he would know so much. More importantly, that traitorous disciple did not obtain the second half of the great Yin-Yang Heaven creation art, or else he wouldn't have tried to kill me. The evil emperor said. The great Yin-Yang Heaven creation art was his unique secret, and the entire pugilistic world knew of it. But it seemed like there was another group of people who had an equally deep understanding of the great Yin-Yang Heaven creation art, and to a certain extent, their understanding was no less than his. Wang Chong frowned and fell silent. Previously, he had been too busy suppressing the conflicting stellar energy in his body to think too deeply about it. But after hearing his master's words, Wang Chong realized that something was amiss. This black-clothed man organization was full of secrets. Even though Wang Chong had exchanged blows with them several times, he had still not been able to uncover their secrets. More importantly, how did they know about the great yin-yang heaven creation art? Thinking back, when that black-clothed man had plotted against him, he had clearly known the circulation pattern of the great yin-yang heaven creation art in his body, allowing him to successfully evade his attempts. In an instant, Wang Chong's expression turned grim. Take a look at this black-clothed man. Is he the one who plotted against you? The evil emperor said. Wang Chong stepped forward to take a look, then shook his head. No, he's probably just one of their lackeys. Wang Chong had some understanding of these black-clothed men. They came from all sorts of organizations. Khitans, Mengshi Zhao's and Arabs, they had all kinds of people. The boundaries between countries and races did not exist here. Moreover, these people were all suicide warriors. If they were captured, they would bite the poison in their teeth and commit suicide, making it impossible for them to leak any information. This black-clothed man that his master had killed was just a lackey they had sent to test whether or not his cultivation had gone berserk. As expected, when I exchanged blows with him, I could sense that he was a little weak. The evil emperor nodded. He had only casually asked this question, so this result was within his expectations. Master, how much longer until I reach that stage? Wang Chong asked. Scarlet Tail, Scorched Tail, Huilong Scarlet Scorpion. This is the order in which this art acts up. In normal circumstances, it should take at least 3 to 5 years from the first outbreak to the point where the art dissipates. You went from the origin energy realm to the peak of the Saint Martial realm almost entirely by absorbing the energy of the great yin-yang heaven creation art. You didn't consolidate your cultivation at all. A normal person like you would have already exploded and died. But whether it's because of your astonishing talent or your incredible luck, you didn't encounter any problems along the way, and even reached the peak of the Saint Martial realm. You even defeated an imperial great general. Not even I would have been able to do this. The evil emperor sighed. Wang Chong said nothing, but a light flashed through his eyes. He naturally knew what was going on. As a peak Saint Martial great general, his understanding and control of energy far surpassed that of an ordinary person. There was no need for him to consolidate his cultivation. But remember, starting from now, you can't act recklessly or use the great yin-yang heaven creation art, much less absorb the stellar energy of others. The evil emperor stared at Wang Chong said, his expression extremely grave. This art was the supreme art that had made him famous. He had immersed himself in it for more than 40 years, and he could be considered the #1 person who knew this art like the back of his hand. He also had a deep understanding of the late stages of the great yin-yang heaven creation art's outbreak. Once the stellar energies began to clash, the cultivator of this art would enter an irreversible state of dispersal. Every day would be spent in a state worse than death. The condition would only get worse and worse, more and more intense, until finally, the cultivator's cultivation would dissipate or even die. The only reason he was able to keep his life after dispersing his cultivation was because of his deep understanding of this art. Anyone else would have died long ago. Your disciple understands. Knowing that this was no trivial matter, Wang Chong hurriedly solemnly said, even if you didn't come to find me, I would have come to find you. Wang Chong was taken aback, a look of surprise on his face. Disciple, your master already knows about your affairs in the capital. You know that your master has never interfered with your affairs in the court, and I don't want to have anything to do with them. But sometimes, as your master, I have to give you some advice. Seeing Wang Chong's pale face, the evil emperor's heart ached. He had accepted many disciples in his life, but Wang Chong could be said to be his most favored disciple. He was young, driven, respectful, and had impeccable character and temperament. But on the other hand, this made the evil emperor's heart ache even more. You come from a clan of ministers and generals, and your heart belongs to the world. No matter how great the danger, as long as the world needs you, you will go, and you will not turn back. This is something that your master is proud of. But for the world, you have already done enough. Since they don't understand you, and even insult you, then you should let go. My disciple, the evil emperor, should not suffer such grievances. It's time for you to think about yourself. This matter is also an opportunity. The evil emperor paused, then took out something from his bosom, and showed it to Wang Chong. He could vaguely make out that it was a tattered map. Chapter 1354. What? Hearing those words, Wang Chong was astonished. He had obtained that treasure map from Iron Cloakly, and it had been around for at least several hundred years. Tracing it back, it could even be traced back to the era of Day in the Sui dynasty. Since then, countless cultivators had tried to find the whereabouts of the world's #1 cultivation technique, but to no avail. Most of them were just groundless rumors. Thus, it was rumored that the technique had been completely lost. Wang Chong didn't expect his master and the chief of Wuxiang to make progress so quickly. Even though they couldn't be sure whether the treasure was really hidden or not, it was worth a try. It had been a long time since news of a suspected location had surfaced in the pugilistic world. Just this fact alone was enough to inspire one's spirits. The voice of his master, the evil emperor, continued. This time, I was planning to travel together with the old village chief of Wuxiang, but this incident is a good thing. You should leave the capital and come with us. Even if this incident hadn't happened to Wang Chong's cultivation technique, he would still have faced the risk of his cultivation going berserk in the future. It was just a matter of bringing it forward. Wang Chong stood there in a daze. These words were completely out of his expectations. What's wrong? You're still unwilling to leave at this point? Even if you're not here, this empire won't fall. Just what in the world is there for you to be so reluctant to leave? Seeing that Wang Chong wasn't saying a word, the evil emperor got a little angry. Sigh. Wang Chong didn't say anything, but he sighed deeply in his heart. How could he not understand his master's painstaking efforts? But how could he leave at a time like this? If not for his reincarnation, he might have accepted his master's words. Even without him, the Tang dynasty could still exist. But Wang Chong knew that this wasn't the case. Master, I understand your painstaking efforts, but can you let me reconsider this matter? As Wang Chong spoke, he bent down and bowed respectfully. Looking at the sincere Wang Chong before him, the evil emperor felt that he had nowhere to vent his anger. This child had an open mind. This was what made him proud. But at the same time, it was what made him feel helpless. All right. If you don't want to go, I can't force you. However, you can't drag this on for too long. The dangers of the great Inyang heaven creation art are not as simple as you think. The evil emperor leaped up onto the top of the wall. Xiao! Almost at the same time, a letter flew out from his sleeve like a sharp sword and shot toward Wang Chong. Wang Chong subconsciously reached out and caught it. He looked down and saw that it was densely packed with his master's mantra and incantation to suppress the rampaging gang qi in his body and delay the danger of qi deviation. Master! A warm feeling welled up in Wang Chong's heart. A gentle breeze blew on the city wall, but his master had already disappeared. Time slowly passed. Wang Chong spent every day in his residence overseeing the overall situation. On one hand, he was constantly dispatching soldiers to keep an eye on Uzan, the Eastern and Western Turks, Arabia and Goguryeo, guarding against any attack. On the other hand, he was constantly supervising the construction of the hybrid rice and warehouses. On the southeastern coast, countless shipbuilding clans were wantonly constructing ships on such a large scale that even the imperial court noticed them. But just like the previous dynasties, the Tang dynasty did not place much importance on the navy. Moreover, as long as Wang Chong did not act on land, the other important officials of the court, including Li Junxian and the Confucian sect, paid little attention to what Wang Chong was doing on the sea. In Sindhu, the mining machines that Zhang Shoji had constructed had long ago been put to use, and a steady stream of Hyderabad ore was being excavated. At the same time, Wang Chong had ordered his men to construct fortifications on the Hyderabad mountains to guard against the Arab threat. If Khorasan was breached, the Arab soldiers could advance into Sindhu at any time, directly threatening Wang Chong's mining operations in the Hyderabad mountains. There was probably no one in the world who did not know of such a rare ore. Even the Tang dynasty imperial court wanted to meddle, much less the Arabs. The only thing worth rejoicing over was that Sindh was rife with malevolent miasma and unbridled plague. Moreover, the Hyderabad mountains were covered in jagged rocks, making them easy to defend but difficult to attack. For the time being, the Arabs had not decided to attack the Hyderabad mountains. In addition, Wang Chong had written a letter to Gao Xianji in the distant western regions, ordering him to lead the Anxi Protectorate army to intimidate the Arabs so that they would not dare to act rashly. Every day that Wang Chong spent mining was another day harvesting ore, and he was racing against time. But Wang Chong was well aware that this sort of happiness would not last for long. At the same time, wave after wave of Sindhi were crossing the border into the Tang dynasty, where they were transported to the promised land. All of this was carried out in secret, and even if they did notice, no one would care. But Wang Chong knew that these Sindhi, who were being transported with the hybrid rice, were the future hope of the entire continent. How is the recruitment of soldiers going? Everything in the study had returned to normal, and Wang Chong was seated on a sandalwood chair as he asked this question. Your Highness, everything is progressing. We have already recruited many Khorasani, people of the western regions, and the elites of our Tang dynasty at the Triangular Gap. However, Suhan's Han sent a message not too long ago, saying that the army at the Triangular Gap should not exceed 100,000, and that they should be dispersed to bases in Greater and Lesser Balar. Otherwise, the imperial court might become suspicious and dissatisfied. Su Shixian bowed as he spoke. Wang Chong said nothing, only silently nodded. Su Hanshan truly had a keen sense for such matters. Not only was he extremely talented in the art of war, he was also extremely sensitive to the affairs of the imperial court. The Triangular Gap was extremely close to Qixi, and although it was not part of the Tang dynasty's territory, it was still bordering it. Stationing 20,000 soldiers there was enough to attract the attention of the imperial court, and the more soldiers there were, the more uneasy the imperial court would become. And once the number of soldiers exceeded 100,000, even if the Triangular Gap was a lawless land, the imperial court would not be able to tolerate it, and would definitely find a way to make trouble for him. Su Hanshan had grasped this situation perfectly. He had scattered the soldiers on the steppe, sending more than half of them to the two bases in Greater and Lesser Balar, and then taking turns to train them. This would not only preserve the imperial court's face, but it would also allow him to amass as many soldiers as he could to deal with any future mishaps. At the same time, he could work with the Anxi Protectorate army to intimidate the Arabs in the western region of Khorasan. In addition, we are also working with the great clans to continue recruiting soldiers. All the soldiers that have been disbanded by the imperial court, the prefectural armies, the imperial army, the mercenaries, and even the martial artists of the sects are all being recruited. In addition, we have dispatched a large number of people to search for martial artists with talent. Xue Qianjun did not know what Wang Chong was thinking, and he bowed as he spoke. The room instantly fell silent. Wang Chong remained seated, a pensive look on his face. Ever since that incident, his mind had become much more open. There was no longer any way to salvage the situation in the imperial court, and the Confucian sect's control over the imperial court was already a fact. All Wang Chong could do was use his own methods to amass soldiers. This way, even if Li Junxian and the Confucian sect turned the Tang dynasty upside down, he would be able to clean up the mess at any time, stabilize the empire, and return peace to the people of this land. And to achieve this goal, the 100,000 soldiers at the Triangular Gap were far from enough. Wang Chong had privately calculated that if he wanted to ensure that the Tang dynasty would not slip up, he would need to prepare at least 500,000 elite soldiers. In the Tang dynasty, this was tantamount to rebellion, and the slightest mistake could result in execution. But Wang Chong no longer cared. Since the imperial court's path was impossible, he would use his own methods to defend the Central Plains, defend the Tang dynasty. As for personal honor and loss, just as the three venerable seniors had said, Even if the entire world cursed him and viewed him as a murderous demon king, it was nothing to be worried about. The Central Plains could not raise soldiers, and the Triangular Gap was the best place to raise soldiers. As for the other places such as Mengshi Zhao Uzan and the Eastern and Western Turks, they all had masters. The Central Plains can't raise soldiers, so we can only think of ways on the sea. But how can a place that can raise 500,000 soldiers be easy? Wang Chong slowly raised his head and muttered to himself, but Wang Chong quickly came back to his senses. Su Shixian, bring that map over. A few moments later, a 6-foot-long and 4-foot-wide map appeared in front of Wang Chong and unfurled itself on the table. This map was a New World map that Wang Chong had created based on Uzan's map of the continent, combined with the scouts that Wang Chong had dispatched and many other military maps. This map included almost all the known regions, and even the reefs where the meteoric metal was located were clearly marked on it. It was truly unique. Wang Chong's eyes slowly scanned the regions on the map, and around him, Su Shixian, Su Kui, Xue Qianjun, and the others followed Wang Chong in scanning the map. Easier said than done. Finding a suitable place to train soldiers was easier said than done. Wang Chong's eyes slowly scanned the map, from the lower left corner to the upper right corner, finally settling on an island on the sea. At that moment, even Su Shixian and Su Qi could clearly sense Wang Chong's eyes brighten. This is the place. At this moment, a voice rang out in Wang Chong's mind. The 10 Islands of Dongying. Chapter 1355. Take a good look. The second training ground is here. There are at least 400,000 to 800,000 soldiers here. Wang Chong pointed at the 10 Islands of Immortal Abode as he spoke to Su Kai and Xue Qianjun. These lands were currently governed by the 10 great empresses, and their military strength was relatively weak. Moreover, Wang Chong clearly remembered that during the calamity in his previous life, the 10 Islands of Immortal Abode had not suffered too much of an impact because they were separated by an ocean. It was just that they were too remote, and whether it was in his previous life or this one, Wang Chong had never had much contact with them, nor did he know what the situation was like with the 10 great empresses. The only one he knew about was Myasame Linka. In the study, Su Shixian, Su Kui, and the others were all skeptical, not knowing why Wang Chong had chosen this place, but they had never doubted Wang Chong's decision. Yes, everyone bowed in unison. Xue Qianjun, make the preparations. When the time comes, transfer a portion of the army from the Triangular Gap, as well as 4,000 Wuxiang cavalry. Each island has a great empress, so try to negotiate if possible. If not, conquer them. Wang Chong said decisively. Yes. Xue Qianjun replied without hesitation. Su Qi, I'll leave this matter to you. In addition, Wang Chong relaxed after saying this, but just as he was about to continue, he suddenly felt a piercing pain erupt from his dantian and spread throughout his body. Wang Chong paled, and just as he was about to gather his stellar energy, he discovered that he had lost control of his stellar energy, and his meridians were in chaos. PFFF. Wang Chong's vision darkened, and he vomited a mouthful of blood. His mind went dizzy, and then he lost consciousness. The last thing he heard were cries of alarm. My lord! My lord! Su Shixian, Su Qi, and the others seemed to be rushing in his direction, but Wang Chong had no idea what would happen next. After some time, the sound of wheels roused Wang Chong from his stupor, and at the same time, he felt a jolt beneath him. You're awake! A familiar voice came from next to his ear. Wang Chong froze for a moment and struggled to open his eyes. Specks of light emerged from the darkness. In this bright light, a figure slowly appeared. He wore a long gray robe and had gray sideburns. A pair of eyes that had experienced the vicissitudes of life stared at him. His eyes filled with concern. Master! Wang Chong's entire body froze at the sight of that figure. What was going on? In the last scene, he clearly remembered that he was still in the study. Why did he see his master? In this jolting feeling, Wang Chong's gaze passed over his master and slowly moved to another place. At that moment, he could clearly see the wooden-veined walls of a carriage. What's going on here? Wang Chong subconsciously turned his head to look at the evil emperor. Do you still find it strange? I told you to think about it, and I gave you a mental cultivation technique. I wanted you to get rid of the excess stellar energy, sort out your body, and stabilize your injuries. But look at you. What did you do? This was the first time the evil emperor had lost his temper in front of Wang Chong, and his complexion was unsightly. By the time we arrived, your body was already a complete mess. It's been so many days, but you didn't even take the time to sort out the great yin-yang heaven creation art. I know that you care about the world, but if you lose your life, can you still protect this country? The evil emperor's eyes blazed with anger. Accustomed to his master's amiable appearance, even Wang Chong couldn't help but shiver at the sight of his master's demonic emperor side. He couldn't help but feel both fearful and moved. Master is right. Your disciple was wrong, Wang Chong sincerely said. Master doesn't have any bad intentions. Do you know that you've been unconscious for 7 days? During this time, we've been treating your injuries intermittently, and only then did we stabilize your injuries. Child, even if your master didn't force you out of the capital, I would have advised you to leave. Although the great yin-yang heaven creation art is tyrannical, its effects on the body are extremely severe. If you leave it like this, you won't be able to last more than half a year. At this moment, an elderly voice came from a corner of the carriage. Wang Chong's body trembled as he turned his head. Nearby, he saw that the chief of Wuxia was seated cross-legged, his face pale and his forehead beaded with sweat. He was slowly ending his cultivation. Wang Chong was at first dazed, but then he realized what was going on and felt a tinge of guilt. Many thanks, Senior. The chief of Wuxia had clearly consumed a great deal of stellar energy. It was clear that he was treating Wang Chong's injuries. There's no need to say such words to us. The chief of Wuxia waved his hand. Wuxia village and Wang Chong were closely connected, and the vast majority of the villagers listened to Wang Chong's orders. In the past, the chief of Wuxia would have never allowed such a thing to happen, but the more he interacted with Wang Chong and understood him, the more difficult it was for the chief of Wuxia to say no. He was a loyal and righteous man who cared for the country and its people. Even if Wuxia village had suffered enormous losses for following him, he could still accept it. At the very least, they had died for the sake of the Central Plains, and their deaths had been glorious. Bang! Just as they were speaking, the carriage suddenly shook. At the same time, a simple voice came from the front. Venerable sirs, Tong passes up ahead. The chief of Wuxia and the evil emperor showed little reaction to these words, but Wang Chong was stunned. Tong Pass. Wasn't that the pass leading from Longxi to Qixi and Anxi? Only now did Wang Chong remember that his master and the chief of Wuxia had mentioned that they had taken him out of the capital. But not even Wang Chong had expected that when he woke up, he was already at Tong Pass, a very far distance from the capital. Still thinking about going back, the evil emperor was seated cross-legged, not even glancing at Wang Chong, but none of Wang Chong's movements could escape his discerning eyes. It'll take at least 7 days to get back from here, and in less than half a day, your injuries will flare up again. If you run into those men in black at this time, without me and the chief of Wuxia, you're basically doomed. In addition, do you want to return to the capital and bring disaster to your mother and little Yao? This was a critical time in the capital, and he had far too many things to do. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been without stellar energy for several days in a row. Wang Chong had not felt much of a reaction at the first part of the sentence, but when he heard the names of his mother and little sister, he immediately hesitated. Your master and I have analyzed the situation. Although those men in black are daring and commit all sorts of crimes, they seem to only be interested in their targets. The majority of the people they have are just collateral damage. If you return in your current state, there's an extremely high chance that they will attack you. The Wuxia village chief's voice came from the side. He had come to this conclusion with the evil emperor, while Wang Chong was unconscious. Returning to the capital now was not a wise decision. But Wang Chong wanted to say more, but the evil emperor quickly interrupted him. There are no buts. Until we find the origin immortal art and heal your injuries, don't even think about going back. If you dare to run, I'll break your legs." The evil emperor coldly and emotionlessly said. Wang Chong bitterly smiled, knowing that his master had truly lost his temper this time. For the evil emperor, whose name struck terror in the hearts of the martial arts world, to speak to him in such a manner despite his anger was already extremely courteous. Wang Chong's eyes flashed, but in the end, he was forced to give up on this idea and helplessly say, "Yes, master." The chief of Wuxiang, seated cross-legged in a corner of the carriage, silently smiled at this sight. This child had a stubborn personality, and if not for his master's actions, he probably wouldn't have changed his mind. Seeing that Wang Chong had finally admitted defeat, the evil emperor's complexion improved. On the other side, the chief of Wuxiang inwardly chuckled at this pair of master and disciple. Knowing that he couldn't go back, Wang Chong decided to follow his master, and the chief of Wuxiang, to the northwest in search of the origin immortal art. The origin immortal art was ephemeral and known as the foremost of all energies, and it was probably the only way to resolve the dangers posed by the great Yinyang heaven creation art. Your Wuxiang village chief and I scouted the northwest several times, but we found nothing. Later on, by a stroke of luck, we obtained a fragment of the origin immortal art's treasure map from another group. Only by combining the two pieces did we begin to see some clues. On the way to the northwest, the evil emperor used this opportunity to tell Wang Chong the story of his and the chief of Wuxiang's adventures in the northwest. This matter has enormous implications, and many people are paying attention to it. Your master and I managed to find some clues, but we also ran into a lot of trouble. Many treasure hunters have gathered in that area, and we also ran into quite a few of your master's comrades. The chief of Wuxiang added, Comrades. Very good comrades." The evil emperor hatefully said, his eyes bursting with bone-chilling killing intent. "Master, you mean?" Wang Chong immediately thought of something. "Your guess is correct. It's those people," the evil emperor coldly said. Wang Chong blinked and took in a deep breath, a strange expression on his face. When he had first encountered his master, he had already been pursued. Other than that rebellious senior brother of his, there had also been a few titans of the martial arts world. These were the true culprits behind the scenes. It was clear that his master had also run into these people on his journey to the northwest. Truly, enemies often cross paths, Wang Chong said. Chapter 1356. But now that he was free, it was a completely different matter. Your master and I have already defeated a group of people, but they managed to escape. If I'm not mistaken, the news of the origin immortal art should have already spread throughout the martial arts world. Searching for the origin immortal art won't be as simple as we imagined, the chief of Wuxiang said. The Wuxiang village chief added, in any case, killing one person is killing 100 is also killing. We can deal with them all in one go. The evil emperor's eyes shone with cold light. Ever since he had retired to the capital, his temper had gotten much better, and he had gotten over many things. He had basically stopped caring about the affairs of the martial arts world. But this did not mean that he didn't care. Since these people wanted to do it again, he didn't mind slaughtering them again. Brother Zhang, we should take our time to consider this matter, the chief of Wuxiang advised. He was old, and unlike the evil emperor, he was not as bloodthirsty. Unless absolutely necessary, it was best not to use killing to resolve many matters. Child, you have to be careful in the northwest. We've already encountered quite a few groups of men in black there, and they seem to be very interested in the origin immortal art. You're also their target, so you have to be very careful in the northwest. Swish! As he spoke, the evil emperor suddenly raised his finger like a sword, sending a sharp bolt of energy into the sky, shattering the roof of the carriage and soaring into the sky. Cree! The shrill cry of a bird came from the sky, and a moment later, an eagle with a wingspan of 5 or 6 feet was struck by the bolt of energy and plummeted from the sky. Eagles could fly at extremely high altitudes, so high that not even crossbows could reach them, but they were completely useless against the evil emperor. Buzz! This sudden movement immediately attracted the attention of the people in the carriage. Was it the one from before? The chief of Wuxiang asked. I don't know. We'll know once we see it. We'll know once we see, the evil emperor calmly said. Who? In the next moment, the air currents surged and a light breeze blew. The eagle that had been shot by the evil emperor's chi energy immediately drew an arc in the air and disappeared into the carriage. With a thud, it landed on the floor of the carriage. In an instant, Wang Chong, the evil emperor, and the chief of Wuxiang's gazes were all drawn to the eagle. The eagle's feathers were scattered all over the ground. A bloody hole the size of a finger had pierced through its heart, completely taking its life. His muscles are bulging, and his wings and feet are extremely strong. This is not an ordinary eagle. He must have undergone special training. Wang Miao said after a glance. The eagle raised a large number of birds. Wang Chong was influenced by what he saw and heard, and he gradually understood the differences between these birds. There was a clear difference in the size of the trained birds and the wild birds. Many of the details showed signs of domestication. The chief of Wuxiang didn't say anything. He only looked at the evil emperor with a questioning gaze. Among the three, the evil emperor had the highest cultivation. His myriad spirit sea art was also much more perceptive in this aspect than the others. It's not the one from before. The evil emperor looked at the dead eagle and shook his head. Then it might not be those people. The chief of Wuxiang said. Although we need to be extra careful on this trip, the Silk Road is a trade route between the east and the west. It has always been a bustling place. It's common to see birds flying between merchants. The chief of Wuxiang said. While saying that, he poked at the eagle's corpse. Sure enough, he saw an intricate metal tube on its foot. Because the eagle's feathers were very thick, it covered the metal tube. If one didn't look closely, they wouldn't be able to see it. Let him be. Seeing the metal tube, the evil emperor frowned. With a wave of his hand, a gust of wind carried the eagle's corpse out of the carriage. Since he had confirmed that it wasn't those people's birds, the evil emperor didn't bother to check the metal tube. Old sirs, did something happen? Coachman's voice came from outside. The 2 consecutive explosions had alarmed him. It's nothing, let's continue, the evil emperor said in a low voice. The carriage immediately fell silent. The winding road headed northwest. Not long after Wang Chong's group left, several figures emerged from the forest in a flash of light, stopping next to the corpse of the eagle that had been abandoned on the side of the road. This eagle is at least 600 to 700 feet above the ground. Even arrows can't reach it. Yet they pierced through it with a single finger. How terrifying. Looking at the eagle's corpse, the group of black-clothed men broke out in cold sweat. Their senses are too strong. Fortunately, we were far away. Otherwise, we wouldn't even know how we died. Another black-clothed man said. Let's report this. Normal methods won't work on them. We need to find another way. At that moment, the third black-clothed man who had been silent all this while spoke up. He suddenly took a few steps forward, knelt down on one knee, and pulled the metal tube from the eagle's leg. Fortunately, it reacted quickly and switched to another eagle. If it wasn't for the tube tied to its leg, we would have been exposed. Let's go. Our mission is over. It's their turn. I heard that even His Eminence has moved out. These fellows won't be able to escape. As they spoke, they picked up the eagle and vanished. Up ahead is Luyao City. If we leave this place, we'll reach Jade Gate Pass. There aren't many residences for several hundred li around where we're going. That's the last place we can rest. We'll stop there, prepare some rations and beans for the horses, and then we can continue on our way. In the carriage, Wang Chong's master, the evil emperor, said. Time passed slowly, and the next few days were calm and tranquil. There were no more twists and turns. The evil emperor and the chief of Wuxiang had spent a long time investigating the origin immortal art, so they were extremely familiar with this place. As they chatted, they quickly arrived at Luyao City. This place was sparsely populated, with only a few thousand households in the city, all of them merchants on the Silk Road. In the end, they had settled down and started a small business here. The imperial court had also established a relay station here. and it had slowly become Luyao City. Drink, drink. The carriage passed through an ancient stone gate and entered Luyao City. A house on the side of the road had a banner of wine fluttering in the wind. Under the banner was a waiter with a towel draped over his shoulder. The moment he saw Wang Chang's group, he immediately approached. Guests, are you heading west from Jade Gate Pass? You've come to the right place to come to our Luyao City. Drink wine, eat meat, braised beef, braised peanuts, green beans, everything is provided. There's no need to hesitate. In all of Luyao City, we're one of the few places where you can find lodging and food. This place is windy and dusty, and we don't often do business. It's rare that you've come so early, and the shopkeeper just happened to have gone to the mainland to get some goods. If you miss this opportunity, you'll have to wait another month. The waiter enthusiastically said. Let's go. This place truly is rarely open. Let's rest here for a bit. As the evil emperor spoke, the three quickly got off the carriage and entered the tavern by the side of the road. Wang Chong walked in with his hands behind his back, taking in his surroundings. This was his first time following his master to explore the origin immortal art. The route his master-in-chief of Wuxia had chosen was completely different from the route to the west, and it was even more desolate and remote. There were even places that led straight into the Gobi Desert, so they had to make ample preparations. Come, come, come. Guests, please sit. It's rare to run into you. So this plate of braised peanuts is a gift from our shopkeeper. In the room, a manservant brought a plate of peanuts to the table. Despite the sandstorm in Luyao City, the interior of the tavern was surprisingly clean. In terms of decoration, it was simple and plain. Although it couldn't compare to the capital, everything else was better than expected. Wang Chong, the evil emperor, and the chief of Wuxia each chose a place to sit in the tavern. Prepare 2 bags of horse feed for me, enough rations for the 4 of us for 15 days. In addition, prepare 2 flints and 6 bags of water. In addition, prepare some food for coachmen. The chief of Wuxia said. Everything was arranged in an orderly manner, but as a junior, Wang Chong didn't have to do anything, only obediently waiting on the side. A few moments later, all the food and wine had been served. The remoteness of the area and the sandstorm meant that there were very few vegetables here. Most of the dishes were dried meat, with braised peanuts and braised beef being the most popular. The majority of the food prepared for the guests in the tavern was dried beef or braised beef. The weather was rather dry, so the food did not easily go bad. Brother Zhang, come, let's eat. The old village chief said to the demonic emperor old man, as he picked up his chopsticks to pick up a plate of braised beef. Wait a moment. Unexpectedly, Wang Chong stopped the 2 of them. As he spoke, he took out a piece of silver from his bosom. Wang Chong would usually bring some silver and gold pieces when he went out, especially when silver pieces had other uses. Wang, with a flick of Wang Chong's finger, the silver piece immediately turned into a silver needle in Wang Chong's hand at a speed visible to the naked eye, and he inserted it into the dishes. Master, it's fine. Wang Chong kept the silver needle, his face calm. Now that they were out, and with the threat of the men in black, it was never wrong to be careful. Seeing this, the evil emperor and the chief of Wuxia nodded slightly. Although Wang Chong didn't have much experience in the pugilistic world, he was meticulous, which was rare. The 3 of them picked up their chopsticks and dug in, soon burying their heads in the food. Time passed slowly, and the 3 of them relaxed. The dishes on the plates were getting lesser, and some of the plates were already empty. Chapter 1357. To deal with the 3 of you. I guess it was not in vain that I paid a huge price to obtain the poison of the deity. The 3 of you are very cautious, to even know how to test for poison with silver needles. Unfortunately, you are still too naive. Not even the gods can detect the presence of the poison of the deity, let alone a few silver needles. After eating so much of me, I want to see if you are as capable as the gods. Fall, fall, fall. The black figure muttered in his heart. The next moment, like magic, Wang Chong, the evil emperor, and the chief of Wuxia's expressions froze, and they all fell onto the dining table like wooden pillars. At that moment, the entire room was silent. After an unknown amount of time, a gust of air flowed through the room. In an instant, a black-robed man appeared in the room like a ghost. The black-clothed man took 2 steps forward and immediately stopped. He carefully sized up the 3 of them, appearing to be very cautious. Although Wang Chong and the others had fallen, he would not take the risk unless he was sure that his target had been poisoned. There is no food on the floor. They must have eaten it. After a while, the black-clothed man finally smiled, and his heart relaxed a lot. Bang, bang, bang. The black-clothed man quickly flicked his finger, sending 3 stones the size of fingers flying through the air, striking the acupuncture points on the backs of Wang Chong, the demonic emperor old man, and the Wuxiang village chief. After doing this, the black-clothed man patted his hands and strode forward. Kid, it's not your time to die. If it wasn't for the fact that the Lord wants to get some information from you, I would have killed the 3 of you right now. The black figure muttered to himself. His gaze swept past Wang Chong, and finally stopped on the evil emperor. Among the 3 of them, the evil emperor had the highest cultivation and posed the greatest threat. Buzz! He walked up to the evil emperor and reached out his palm towards the evil emperor without any hesitation. However, in the blink of an eye, something unexpected happened. A powerful palm suddenly drilled out of the sleeve and grabbed the vital acupoint on the black-clothed man's wrist. The black-clothed man turned pale with fright when he saw this, and the aura within his body suddenly erupted as he fled backwards like a fleeing rabbit. However, even though he reacted quickly, the evil emperor reacted even faster. Before he could escape, his 5 fingers tightened and firmly clamped down on his right hand. At the same time, a huge force flowed through the meridians in his palm and into the black-clothed man's body, controlling his body. This is impossible, the black-clothed man screamed, his eyes wide open and his face as white as a sheet of paper. Looking at the old man in front of him, he felt as if he had seen a ghost. Impossible. No one can resist the power of the celestial powder. At that moment, the black-robed man's expression was one of extreme terror. Even poison needs to be eaten for it to be effective. If you don't eat it, it's useless no matter how poisonous it is. Suddenly, a voice sounded in his ear. Wang Chong and the evil emperor raised their heads from the table and looked at the man in black with a faint smile, using a silver needle to determine whether it was poisonous or not. How could he be so childish? From the beginning to the end, the master and disciples had only cooperated with each other to put on a show for the black-clothed man. Impossible, I saw you eat it. As long as you ate it, there's no way you would be fine. The black-clothed man gritted his teeth. He could not accept this fact. He was not a careless person. Before he made his move, he had already confirmed that Wang Chong and the others had indeed eaten all the dishes. Otherwise, he would not have made a move. Are you talking about this plate of braised beef? An elderly voice sounded in his ear. The evil emperor's expression was calm as he pointed 2 fingers in front of him. The black-clothed man took a glance, and his face immediately darkened. 1 piece, 2 pieces, 3 pieces. The small plate of braised beef had been divided into 7 plates by Wang Chong and the others. He only noticed that there were not many dishes left on the plate, but he did not notice what was left. Wang! The evil emperor flicked out a stream of true energy. In an instant, on one of the plates, there was a fat and juicy piece of braised beef. The water on it evaporated, and a white powder appeared on its surface. Seeing this white powder, the black-clothed man's face turned ashen. Impossible. The celestial powder is colorless, odorless, and tasteless. There's no way to tell. The black-clothed man felt as if he had been struck by a heavy blow. The situation before him had completely shattered his understanding. Wang Chong only smiled at this scene. His master's myriad spirit sea technique had reached the peak of perfection, a realm that others could not even imagine. This powder may be colorless, odorless, and tasteless, but in the world of energy, it was completely different. Any impurities would show up, like a black dot on a piece of white paper. No matter how small it was, it could be noticed. You won't be the only one on this mission. Call your companions out, Wang Chong said straightforwardly. Ha ha ha. Hearing Wang Chong's words, the black-clothed man who had been filled with fear suddenly laughed. There was no trace of the fear he had before. You guys are just as difficult to deal with as the higher-ups say. You've already discovered it, but you still put on an act with me. One last question. You ordered 14 dishes, and I only put the colorless, odorless, and tasteless celestial powder in the braised beef. However, even if you were cautious and discovered it in advance, since you've eaten my dishes, the celestial powder on your chopsticks and cups must have entered your stomachs. Why are you still fine? This is my last question. You answer me and I'll answer you. This time, Wang Chong only smiled. He did not even bother to explain. He merely picked up his chopsticks and showed them to the black-clothed man. When he saw the pair of dry chopsticks that had not even been touched by salt, as if they had never been used before, the black-clothed man's face darkened. Although Wang Chong did not elaborate, the black-clothed man understood what was going on. Although Wang Chong and the others seemed to be eating and drinking normally, everything was different from what they saw. When they used the chopsticks to pick up the food, they did not touch it at all. Instead, they used a thin layer of stellar energy to pick up the food. This way, they would not come into contact with the poison on the chopsticks. You bastards! The black-clothed man gritted his teeth. Everyone said that they were cunning and treacherous, but these three bastards were even more cunning and treacherous than they were. You're smart, but even if you've seen through it, you're still going to die. Crack! Before anyone could react, in the next moment, a sudden change occurred. A violent energy suddenly erupted from his body, like a volcanic eruption. In an instant, the black-clothed man's body became weak and slippery like a loach. He suddenly pulled himself out of the evil emperor's grasp. Given the evil emperor's abilities, the fact that he was able to escape from his grasp showed that the black-clothed man was an extremely powerful expert. Kill them! The black-clothed man gritted his teeth. His cold, murderous voice resounded through the entire restaurant. Swoosh! Without any hesitation, the black-clothed man shot out like an arrow released from a bow, creating a gust of wind in the restaurant as he fled into the distance at lightning speed. Humph! Wang Chong only smirked when he saw this. This mysterious organization of black-clothed men was indeed powerful. They had all kinds of mysterious skills and techniques, and they even managed to escape from his master's grasp. But it was one thing to get rid of him, and quite another to run away. If he could escape so easily in front of the three of them, who were at the pinnacle of the world, and were close to reaching the subtle realm, then this guy could really be called a super expert. However, if he was really that powerful, why would he run? Bam, bam, bam. Almost at the same time, Wang Chong, the evil emperor, and the chief of Wuxiang acted at the same time. Wang Chong spread his fingers, and a powerful suction force broke through the air. Rumble! In the face of this powerful suction force, the wall in front of them instantly shattered, and the black-clothed man who had been flying away was caught by Wang Chong. After this period of recuperation, the condition of Wang Chong's body had stabilized a lot, and a lot of the impure true qi had been expelled. Although the current Wang Chong could no longer easily absorb other people's stellar energy, just this wave of true qi alone was enough to hold the black-clothed man in place. Not good. In the midst of his escape, the black-clothed man suddenly felt his body stiffen, and his expression immediately changed. If it had been any other place, this suction force would not have affected him too much, but at this time, it was fatal. Just a moment's delay was enough to make him fall from heaven to hell. Rumble! An enormous wave of energy, earth-shattering and earth-shattering, shot toward the black-clothed man's back at an astonishing speed. Ah! The black-clothed man suddenly screamed and turned around. Stellar energy surged out of his body, and it violently collided with the all-out attack of the chief of Wuxiang behind him. Bang! There was an explosion, and the entire roof of the restaurant was blasted off by this enormous wave of energy. Countless bricks and debris flew dozens of meters into the air. Boom! At almost the same time, a third wave of energy arrived. In the blink of an eye, hundreds and thousands of energy waves condensed into one, forming a milky white arrow of energy, more than 10 zhang long, which pierced through the black-clothed man's back. Before the black-clothed man could get far, his body twitched, and he immediately collapsed to the ground motionless. Wang Chang's great Yinyang heaven creation art had sucked him in and restrained him, while the chief of Wuxiang had lured him into a direct confrontation, causing him to reveal an opening and panic. Then the evil emperor had struck a fatal blow and killed him. The coordination between the three was seamless and flawless, and they did not even give the black-clothed man a chance to catch his breath before instantly killing him. Chapter 1358. Kill. Don't let them escape, kill them. Almost at the same time that the black-clothed man fell, a wave of battle cries came from all around. On the broken roof, the main door behind the wall, beside the window, more black-clothed men with murderous intent pounced on the trio from all directions. Give me your life. In the blink of an eye, there was a loud roar and a flash of golden light. A huge arm as strong as a mountain suddenly came crashing down on the three people from the top of the broken restaurant. Chapter 1325. Battle between the heavens and the earth. At that moment, they could clearly see that the huge arm was covered in scales that looked like coins. It gave them the feeling that it was a huge Qilin claw. Roar. A deafening roar echoed out, desolate and tyrannical. In the next instant, a bright light flashed, and a scorching black flame burst forth. The gigantic Qilin beast's claw immediately stomped down on the three of them. Bang! The entire room, along with Wang Chong and the others, were about to be crushed into powder by the Qilin beast's claws. In the next moment, something strange happened. In front of everyone's eyes, a white walking stick that was disproportionate to the huge Qilin beast's claw fiercely collided with the huge beast's claw. Wang! The shockwave exploded, and the golden Qilin beast's claw, that was as large as a mountain and contained a terrifying destructive power, suddenly stopped when it was over 6 meters away from the ground. It was as if it had encountered an impregnable fortress, and it was unable to move an inch forward. The chief of Wuxiang had finally made his move. Old village chief, I'll leave that child Chonger to you. His injuries haven't healed yet, so he can't fight a protracted battle. Do your best to not let him fight. It was also at this moment that a vigorous old and deep voice suddenly rang out in everyone's ears. The evil emperor spread out his palm. In an instant, a blinding amount of energy shot out from his palm. Each of these energy streams was only as thick as a finger, but they were extremely solid, like swords, indestructible and indestructible. Boom! With just a thought from the evil emperor, the milky white energy burst forth in all directions like a blooming flower, attacking in every direction and corner. Ah! Shrill cries of agony could be heard as the black-robed men, who were charging in from all directions, were struck by the evil emperor's sword chi. One by one, they trembled and fell to the ground. Although the myriad spirit sea technique was not listed in the 10 great miraculous techniques in his previous life, it was only because no one had successfully cultivated it, and no one had witnessed its power. But in the hands of the evil emperor, this unparalleled technique finally revealed its true power. No matter how many enemies he faced, the myriad sea of spirit art would be able to take on many enemies at once and kill them. Unless his opponent had reached the same realm as the evil emperor, it would be very difficult for him to withstand the unparalleled power of the myriad sea of spirit art. Kill them! In the blink of an eye, a loud roar was heard, just as the chief of Wuxiang and the evil emperor launched their attacks. The group of men in black also launched their own attacks. Chi! About 10 steps away from the group, a masked man in black stood near the window. He wore a pair of deerskin gloves in his hands and threw them forcefully. In the next moment, black smoke billowed, and an endless amount of black dust covered the sky. It spread toward Wang Chong, the evil emperor, and the chief of Wuxiang. Be careful! Wang Chong's expression turned cold, and his expression changed. With just a glance, Wang Chong could tell that the black smoke-like powder was extremely poisonous. Boom! With no time to think, Wang Chong immediately sealed all the pores on his body. At the same time, a misty light shot out from his body. Then the sun and the moon appeared on his left and right. In an instant, with Wang Chong at the center, the air in the room turned into a huge cyclone. It spun rapidly and swept the black smoke-like powder outside. Ah! Amidst the shrill screams, another black-clothed man, along with the powder, exploded out of the stone-built restaurant and flew out like a kite with its string cut. As for Wang Chong, his face immediately paled. He had only managed to suppress his cultivation defect. If he rashly used too much stellar energy, or exchanged too many blows, it would immediately aggravate his injuries and cause his blood energy to roil. Don't worry about those two old fellows. Go for the young one first. The leaders of the men in black immediately sensed the abnormality on Wang Chong's body and ordered the remaining men in black to lunge at Wang Chong. Roar! The roars of wild beasts, filled with a tyrannical and cruel aura, cut through the sky. One of the men in black began to swell and transform. In the blink of an eye, he had transformed into a monster with the upper body of a beast and the lower body of a human. Moreover, he was 70 to 80% similar to the Lu Wu that had appeared in the Wang clan. The moment this man in black completed his transformation, his body began to exude violet flames. His eyes shone with a savage light as he lunged at Wang Chong with astonishing speed. At almost the same time, the roars of beasts could be heard from other places. There were 4 or 5 people in their half-Lu form. I said long ago that this place will be your burial ground. Give up struggling and obediently accept your death. A powerful shout rang out. The black-clothed leader's arms exploded, and a vast life force surged out of his body like a tide. This energy was completely different from the strength of Lu Wu. It contained a powerful life energy, but it was also brimming with a dark, evil, and destructive energy. One was life, the other was death. These two completely different energies were perfectly fused together on the body of this leader. Awah! With a long, mournful howl, the leader of the black-clothed men suddenly spread his feet, and all the joints in his body grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. A black pattern appeared behind his ear, and then spread like a spider web, quickly covering his entire body. This black tattoo was like a totem, ancient and mysterious, imbued with an unknown energy. Kacha, kacha, kacha. A series of crisp sounds came from the leader of the black-robed men's body. At the instant the black lines formed, the leader's hair exploded, and his entire body grew. From his original height of 7 feet, he directly grew to 9 feet. His limbs and torso became incomparably thick. As he stood there, he looked like a giant from ancient times. Die! The leader of the men in black had transformed into a humanoid beast, and at this moment, his aura had more than doubled. Boom! Shockwaves spread out as the black-robed leader's stellar energy exploded out, and he vanished like a specter. Heaven Protector, Black Flame Azura. A series of violent shouts rang out. Almost at the instant the leader of the black-robed men pounced forward, the other black-robed men in other directions simultaneously activated all their powers and transformed into huge and ferocious black Azuras. Bang! The moment they summoned the Black Flame Azuras, they worked together with the leader of the men in black to attack Wang Chong, the evil emperor, and the chief of Wuxiang with astonishing speed. In a flash, the atmosphere was so tense that even Wang Chong couldn't help but grimace. For so many top-class experts to be mobilized at once, it was clear that these people wanted to capture him and his master in one fell swoop. But a few moments later, Wang Chong came back to his senses. A fall into the pit. A gain in your wit. You want to use the same trick on me a second time? Wang Chong sneered. The fire of Lu Wu, the fire of Ju Bai, and the fire of Mara were extremely tyrannical flames, and they were incompatible with each other. Although Wang Chong had suffered greatly because of this, he also had a deep understanding of these 3 types of flames. Using these 3 types of flames to deal with him was nothing more than wishful thinking. In terms of understanding of these 3 types of flames, not even these men in black could compare to him. Master Village Chief, leave those cultivators of the fire of Lu Wu to me, Wang Chong said. In his current situation, the more stellar energy he absorbed, the greater the danger of his cultivation defect, and the worsening of his injuries. But the fire of Lu Wu was different. Although it was tyrannical and brimming with destructive energy, it also contained an incredible vitality. This powerful vitality was precisely what Wang Chong needed. Through the power of Lu Wu, Wang Chong could strengthen his body and alleviate the pain and danger of his cultivation defect. Bang! In a wave of energy, Wang Chong's body flickered, and then he vanished. This was the first time in this battle that he had taken the initiative to attack. Bzz. 6 or 7 paces from his original position, Wang Chong appeared out of thin air, his foot on the head of a Lu Wu man in black. In a flash, a massive vortex seemed to appear beneath Wang Chong's feet, exploding with a powerful suction force. The violet flames on the man in black's body leaped and danced, instantly entering Wang Chong's body like rivers flowing into the sea. Impossible! The Lu Wu man in black suddenly opened his eyes in disbelief. Boom! In his shock, he swung his arms at Wang Chong. In this Lu Wu state, his fingernails had become as sharp as those of a wild beast. From a certain perspective, they were even sharper than swords. You should go down. At this moment, an icy voice came from above. Wang Chong poured his strength into his right foot, and an enormous force like thousands of mountains surged through Wang Chong's right foot and stomped down. Awa! The earth quaked as Wang Chong stomped the powerful Lu Wu man in black into the ground, his head smashing into the earth. These men in black truly were powerful and had strange techniques, but a starving camel was still larger than a horse. Although Wang Chong had gone berserk, he was still an expert close to the subtle realm. Unless they were at the same level, they would find it very difficult to threaten him. Chapter 1359. After heavily wounding a Lu Wu man with a kick, Wang Chong immediately lunged at the other Lu Wu men in black. As he lunged forward, a powerful vitality flowed through his body, nourishing it. In this brief clash, Wang Chong had absorbed nearly 70% of the Lu Wu energy in the men in black. As expected, feeling the cool and refreshing energy flowing through his body like a stream, Wang Chong was invigorated and immediately began to work faster. Capture him! Seeing this scene, a voice came from the sky. The leader of the men in black, more than 9 feet tall, and clearly stronger than an imperial great general, lunged at Wang Chong. Of the 3, Wang Chong was their true target. Junior, in front of this old man you have no right to speak. At this moment, an old and cold voice rang out. Before the leader of the black-robed men could react, a huge wave of energy came crashing down from the top of his head. The leader only glanced at it before his face paled. Rumbling could be heard as a gigantic green palm descended from the sky. It was as large as a mountain, and it carried a force of tens of thousands of caddies. Not good. The black-robed leader's expression changed drastically. In the blink of an eye, he gathered all the strength in his body and conjured up a black fire of Mara that shot upwards. But the leader had clearly underestimated the power of the evil emperor's palm. Rumble! The ground shook, and dust billowed into the sky. Under the gazes of the group of black-robed men, the leader of the black-robed men, who was the strongest among them, only managed to block for a moment, before he was instantly crushed by that vast and unstoppable force. His entire body seemed to have been struck by lightning, and like a toad, he let out a miserable shriek as he was smashed into the ground. Leader! Seeing this scene, the expressions of the black-clothed men, who were originally full of murderous intent, changed drastically. In this operation, the leader of the men in black was the strongest. At the same time, he was also the trump card to deal with Wang Chong, the evil emperor, and the chief of Wuxiang. His strength had already reached the pinnacle, and even the influential great generals of the mortal world were nothing in his eyes. With his monstrous strength, he could easily defeat any great general. The black fire of Mara could burn all things, and it was extremely effective against a martial artist's stellar energy. In this world, there was probably no one who could deal with it. However, no one had expected that he would be pressed into the ground in just one move, and he even let out a miserable howl. With the level of pain tolerance of the people in the organization, this was simply unimaginable. In an instant, the atmosphere on the battlefield changed subtly. Everyone felt apprehensive as they looked at the black-robed old man. A bunch of ants dares to be so impudent in front of me. On the other side, the evil emperor's long hair was held in place by a single hairpin. His robes fluttered in the wind, and his expression was one of majesty and might. At the same time, an enormous and fearsome energy exploded from his body. At this moment, the evil emperor seemed to have returned to his former self, the number one figure of the evil path whom countless people in the martial arts world could only look up to and pale in fear at the mere mention of his name. These men in black had repeatedly pursued and killed his disciple. This had violated the evil emperor's great taboo and ignited the fury in his heart. Although he had been betrayed by his disciple, everyone in the martial arts world knew that the evil emperor had always been the most protective of his disciples. Save the leader and kill them. Suddenly a harsh shout rang out. An expert whose strength was second only to the leader of the men in black pointed his sword at the evil emperor's group. Although the strongest leader was restrained, there were a total of 3 leaders in this operation of the black-clothed men. The deputy leader, who was ranked second, immediately took over the command. Bam, bam, bam. Without the slightest hesitation, the black-robed men's auras surged as they took a step forward. Like fishes, they shot toward the 3 of them from all directions. This was especially true for Wang Chong, who had always been their focus. Swoosh! A pitch-black sword sliced through the air and slashed at Wang Chong's shoulder. Almost at the same time, the second man in black appeared behind Wang Chong. His huge fist was burning with purplish-black flames as he punched at Wang Chong. Die! Roaring savagely, one of the men in black transformed into a black flame Azura and used the void movement technique to instantly appear behind the evil emperor. The transformed black flame Azura moved its 6 arms and brandished a saber, a halberd, and a spear made of earth energy. The saber, halberd, and spear were wrapped in black flames that could burn the heavens and boil the seas. With lightning speed, they stabbed at the evil emperor's back. The others also attacked the chief of Wuxiang. Why are you all so stubborn? The chief of Wuxiang sighed. Leaning on his walking stick, there was a hint of helplessness in his expression. I'm not a bloodthirsty person by nature, but you can't blame me for being so aggressive. Boom! A gust of wind blew, and a beam of light descended from the sky, enveloping the chief of Wuxiang. Almost at the same time, the chief of Wuxiang's body glowed brightly. Under the gazes of countless people, a 3-eyed god descended from the sky and appeared behind the chief of Wuxiang. The 3-eyed god was covered in bronze armor and looked majestic. He looked down on the world, giving off a feeling of invincibility. But in the next moment, the 3-eyed god's tightly shut eyes suddenly opened. There were no eyeballs in his eyes, but 2 tiny palms stretched out of his eyes. The palms opened, revealing a pair of abstruse eyes. Young Run! Someone cried out, recognizing the 3-eyed god at a glance. It was the legendary Yang Run of the Central Plains, the exterminator of all evils, the true lord among gods. The chief of Wuxiang had summoned Yang Ren's clone, and his body immediately exuded an intense, desolate aura that would strike fear into the hearts of those who looked at him. Exterminator of all evils! The chief of Wuxiang's eyes were cold. He tapped the walking stick in his hand, and in an instant, the white walking stick turned into a black halberd. The chief of Wuxiang also disappeared from where he was. At the same time that the chief of Wuxiang disappeared, the men in black suddenly froze, as if they had lost control of their bodies. Only their eyes flickered with extreme fear. Bum bum bum. There was a series of explosions as the chief of Wuxiang reappeared at the gate. Behind him, bloody holes had appeared in the bodies of the men in black. No matter how powerful their stellar energy was, they seemed incapable of stopping the attacks of the chief of Wuxiang. A few moments later, the men in black, whether they were in their half-luwu or black flame Azura forms, exploded into black ash that drifted through the air. Yang Ren's divine art. This was the strongest technique of Wuxiang village. No one knew the origins of this technique, not even the chief of Wuxiang. He only knew that this technique had existed since the founding of Wuxiang village. But this technique was extremely demanding and difficult to cultivate. The chief of Wuxiang had only comprehended it after experiencing the Battle of Talas. Before that battle, the chief of Wuxiang and Wang Chang's master, the evil emperor, had already come into contact with and comprehended a few things about the subtle realm. But the Battle of Talas was the first time the two of them had seen someone truly reach the subtle realm, and they had even seen the most precious breakthrough process. Thus, after returning from that battle, the chief of Wuxiang and the evil emperor had both comprehended many things. And it was during this period that the chief of Wuxiang had comprehended the Yang Run God art. Among them, the Banish All Evil was one of Yang Ren's 3 great techniques. When using this technique, no matter how strong the opponent's moves were, how hard the armor was, or how much they tried to block, Yang Ren's divine technique could easily break through the opponent's defense. More importantly, the chief of Wuxiang could use the Yang Ren God art to affect the stellar energy in his opponent's bodies, rendering them immobile. This was the reason why those men in black had suddenly frozen to the spot. With a single move, more than half of the ruined restaurant had been cleared, let alone the men in black. Even Wang Chong was surprised by this power. What a powerful technique! On the road, he had heard the chief of Wuxiang mention this. But words were one thing, and action was another. These men in black had an endless array of techniques and extremely powerful vitality, especially those who cultivated the black flame Azura art. Even Wang Chong would find it difficult to kill them in a single blow. But in front of the chief of Wuxiang, these men in black couldn't even last one round. How could there be such a thing? Let's go. The vice leader of the black-clothed men was extremely shocked when he saw this. He had never thought that these 3 people would be so difficult to deal with. With the strength of the team they led, they could even destroy an entire sect. However, after a battle, not only did they not manage to do anything, but they were also slaughtered by them. Even their strongest leader was heavily injured. There was no hope for them to continue fighting. Swish! Without the slightest hesitation, one of the men in black waved his hand, scattering a large amount of poisonous powder at Wang Chang's group. And then all the men in black began to flee in every direction like birds and beasts. Wang Chong sneered. With a thought, he activated the great Yin-Yang Heaven creation art once more, and the surrounding air once more fell under his control. Forget it, let them be. Just as Wang Chong was about to make his move, his master, the evil emperor, suddenly spoke in his ear. Wang Chong hesitated for a moment before exploding his junqi. The flow of air that had been directed inward was now directed outward. With a boom, all the poisonous gas, debris and bricks were pushed out. When the smoke dissipated, only Wang Chong, the evil emperor, chief of Wuxiang, and the leader of the men in black, who was being trampled under the feet of the evil emperor, were left in the restaurant. With this big fish in hand, there was naturally no need to care about the other small fish. Speak. Who are you people? Why are you so relentlessly pursuing my disciple? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.